If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
We are back. I'm Chris Evan, the CEO of Survival Dispatch. We have a very special 2-hour episode tonight. In the first hour, we're going to bring you firsthand intelligence on terrorist activity in Afghanistan and their assets that are already here in America, poised to simultaneously attack multiple U.S. cities before Ramadan 2026, which is in February. In the second hour, we're going to cover what we know with regards to the planned attacks and how each of us can be proactive to prepare as best as possible for attacks that reportedly are going to make 9/11 look like a blip on the radar. We've assembled a pretty large panel of subject matter experts this evening, some of whom will be with us for the first hour and some who will be with us for the second hour. We will not be covering the daily terrorism sit rep, the conflict question, or the best news story submitted by our audience tonight, because we've got so much to share with you. They will resume tomorrow night, however. And I'll be bringing the first group on stage here in just a minute, right after this special message from our friends at Noble Gold Investments. And it's kind of an interesting time for this to come up again in conversation. Y'all who've been following us know that I haven't really embraced any gold companies. I like Noble Gold. I like the people there. I like the values. I like the fact that Charlie Kirk works with them as well. And I was thinking to myself, if these attacks happen, and there's a high probability of that, we'll probably have the same economic downturn that we saw immediately after 9/11. And for anybody who was self-employed will remember, they were kind of tough times unless you were, in specialty industries. So this is probably a pretty good time to think about what you're doing with your investments overall, especially your 401k. It's okay if you think it's safe and it's growing, it's going to be enough for your retirement, but the $1 million, I'll date myself here, the $64,000 question is, what if it isn't? So, the truth is, and I've shared this before, 401ks were never designed to make you wealthy. They were designed in corporate boardrooms to offload the risk and expense to you from corporations. And that's until now. So you can take control of your 401k and back it by gold. So Noble Gold Investment have helped many thousands of people protect their future by converting part of their retirement savings into physical gold. If you talk to Noble Gold today, they'll teach you quite quickly how safe and easy it is to roll over your 401k into a tax advantage gold IRA without any penalties or headaches. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com to get your free wealth protection kit, including a step-by-step guide to get started. And if you sign up with them by the end of this month, I believe is the cutoff date, they're going to send you 2 5-ounce sterling silver America the Beautiful coins. All right, here we go. Fasten your seatbelts. Giddy up. All right, so beside me, I've got my co-host tonight, John Wheaton. Beside him, our new friend, Khalid Muhammad, who I will have introduce himself in just a minute. My good friend, Randy Nance from Texas, combat wounded Green Beret, and our in-house CIA operative, Jeff MD, author extraordinaire. So just to kick this off, Khalid, if you could give us the elevator introduction to yourself and Command 11, I'd appreciate it.
Command 11, first, thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be on. It's always good to talk about this part of the world and what's happening, because it affects everything that happens everywhere else in the world and no one realizes it. Command 11 itself is a part think tank, part intelligence agency. We started operations in 2015 formally, but my background with terrorism started in 2007 when the Taliban Pakistan took over the Swat district in Pakistan, where I originally hail from. And for 2.5 years, we fought the Taliban in Swat, and we're part of, a private militia that pushed them out. Then I went back to normal life and ran a marketing company. In 2015, I started Command 11, and we've been working counterterrorism and analysis and intelligence since then.
And so if I understand correctly, you're also friends with Sarah Adams, correct? And you've shared a lot of intel with her from your group?
Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to establish that. So the first segment tonight, I'd like our audience to get a handle on the situation in Afghanistan and Pakistan to a lesser extent. And I've got a few questions for you, but just a fair warning to our audience. I am the only person on stage here who's not a military veteran or has ever been to Afghanistan, Iraq, or the Middle East. So I'm going to limit myself tonight to strictly asking stupid questions. And all the guys who are with me are much smarter and have experience. They will answer those questions. So the first one straight to you, Khalid, is you've been tracking terrorist groups on the ground in Afghanistan. Who's there and what are they preparing for?
It's more of a question of who's not here. If you look at Afghanistan, I mean, since 2001, when the U.S. withdrew from Afghanistan, Afghanistan has turned into the hotbed of terrorism for every terror group in the world. Everyone comes here. Everyone is connected. Everyone gets trained here. Everyone gets something from Afghanistan. Whether you are talking about Boko Haram, whether you're talking about Hezbollah, whether you're talking about Hamas, if you're talking about IRGC, if you're talking about ISIS, if you're talking about Al-Qaida, everybody's in Afghanistan. And this was our fear when the Doha Accords were being negotiated. We were screaming and yelling that this is a mistake. Do not do this. Do not do this. Don't hand Afghanistan back to the Taliban. Find another way, but don't give it back to the Taliban, because there's no way you're going to be able to control what happens in Afghanistan after you give it back. And what we expected to happen has happened. As badly as Biden planned his withdrawal from Afghanistan, you gifted the Taliban and every terror group $7 billion in weapons that have been distributed around the world. Every terror group, every cartel has got those weapons now in their hands. And now the inside story that we've got is that Afghanistan is being marginalized in the White House, that no one needs to pay attention to Afghanistan anymore because it's not an issue. It's not a security risk anymore. Let the Taliban do what they need to do. We'll work with them. We'll do whatever we need to do. We'll keep Afghanistan stable. The mistake with that is you're trusting terrorists. And when you trust a terrorist, you get exactly what you have in Afghanistan today, exactly what you have in Syria today. You cannot trust these guys. And they're taking millions of dollars from the U.S., and at the same time, they're putting U.S. national security at risk.
It's hard to get my head wrapped around that, Khalid. Jeff, I want to go to you first and ask you specifically, was the botched Afghanistan withdrawal complete incompetence, or was it planned, in your opinion?
I think it was incompetence. Trump actually had a workable plan, because in Afghanistan, there are 4 seasons. There's planting season, fighting season, harvesting season, and winter, when all the passes snow in. So, they plant the crops, then they go fight, then they harvest the crops, then they hunker down for the winter. Trump's plan was to delay the pullout until winter, or actually fall and winter, when all the men of fighting age were either harvesting crops or hunkered down for the winter. Biden moved it up because he wanted the optic of pulling out of Afghanistan on or about the anniversary of 9/11. So what he did is he pulled out right in the middle of fighting season. And so they were all available to basically overwhelm the Afghan government that was left in place. The Afghan government did not get time to solidify. Don't know that they would have. You never know. But the original plan would have given them about 6 months to get their act together, maybe even a little bit more. But that all blew up.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that they had all those seasons, humorous or not.
Yeah.
Randy, coming to you next. I'm curious, in your deployments, I know you didn't serve in Afghanistan, although you did go to Afghanistan and got to shoot some cool weapons after the fact, right?
Yeah, so basically a USO tour, which, they carted us around the whole country. So it was very cool.
Yeah, so the gist of it for our audience is Randy's a combat wounded vet. He was hit by an IED extensive burns to the lower part of his body. It took half of his glutes off, destroyed his right leg, which he lost. And
Left. I'm sorry. Left.
Part, yeah. Well, I only got one eye, so it could be left.
Yeah. You're looking at my picture.
Yeah, there you go. But anyway, Randy and some other veterans got to go back to the front lines in Afghanistan and shoot some pretty badass weapons and walk off the battlefield for their last time instead of being carried off. But Randy, I'm curious, when you did go to Afghanistan, what year was that again? It wasn't that many years ago, was it?
I believe it was 2017.
Okay.
Yep.
And what were your impressions at the time, just from boots on the ground?
Well, obviously, we did not go outside the perimeter, right? We went to each installation, basically, you know, including the embassy, and we were based out of Bagram, and so it was a USO tour. What, you know, at that time, basically, all the warfighters there, all of our sort of were just like Khalid just mentioned before we got on. There was nobody back here talking about them. They were kind of forgotten. And it wasn't just Afghanistan. It was even our guys in there, you know, all our troops. You know, I wouldn't say morale was down, but you know what I mean? It was a little different. But again, I didn't get to really interact with many of the Afghan people, and I certainly didn't go on any missions. So I can't really speak to how the interaction was there. I could just tell you that we visited and of course they all come out and shook our hands. So it was it was a great event. It was a great tour. And we got to meet all the warfighters on the ground, basically at every installation we went to. So it was a good trip.
One last question before I go to John. What did that do for yourself and fellow injured vets as far as PTSD was concerned?
Well, you know, it's beyond PTSD. And I'll have to be honest, I'll try not to take too much, so I'll make this as concise as possible. But I was working at SOCOM, and it was called the SOCOM Care Coalition. Back when I hired on, I was the 17th person, and when I left, there were 70 globally. So it was growing, and I was when that was brand new. And in 2009, the organization that runs these things did come. They brought me in the office because I was the token wounded guy in Tampa, Florida, at MacDill Air Force Base at SOCOM anyway. And they asked me. They said, "Hey, they want to put together this thing where they're going to take guys like yourself that got wounded back to Iraq and Afghanistan, whichever one they went to. We're even going to take them back to the spot it happened. We'll take them to the cache they went through, you know, and basically let them then walk back off the battlefield under their own terms." And, you know, I said, you know, I don't think I really need that. I said, but I will tell you, there are a bunch of guys that do, and that have said something, so to speak. I guarantee if you do it, you'll get a good response because there's a lot of people that could get value out of it. The funny thing is, so I could have went on the very first trip, you know, but I passed up that option. And then they called me in 2017 and said, "Hey, you know, we're going to be going to Afghanistan, and we wondered if you wanted to come along." And I said, "Well, shoot, you know, I wasn't injured in Afghanistan, so I don't want anybody to think I'm trying to get over." And they said, "No." He said, "You know, this is the 21st trip. Now that I'm on the 21st instead of the first." But he said, what we've learned in all that time, Randy, is it's not about the geography. It's about the brotherhood. And the Pentagon's already blessed off on you going. So if you want to go, then we'd like to have you. And I said, you know what? I said, you know, in the spirit of that, I think you're right. So I'm going to go to support the other guys that were injured in Afghanistan. I think all the rest were. And then also I'm going to help support the warfighters on the ground right now. And he said, perfect. But, you know, we had no more hit Kuwait and went through Arifjan, you know, and did our little speaking there. And when I got up and spoke to those troops and we left, I don't know, I was like, oh, you know what? I might have needed this more than I ever thought. So really, by the time I got done with the trip, I realized it did make a big difference because I still remember the night it happened. You know what I mean? It was probably 9:30, 10:30 at night, and we were just doing a little recon through the neighborhood that we were going to be coming back to in 48 to 72, and had a huge package, 23 bad guys on the tip, and that is a big package. And so, but we needed a clean route in and out, and the conventional forces had just switched out, and we missed a high-value target 30 days before that because of it. And so we barely got in the neighborhood. I get hit, you know, and I still remember on the way to the cache, you know, I was pissed off, man. I was extremely upset. Even though I was burned up, both my legs were burned completely up. Half my butt was gone on both cheeks, which I didn't even realize in the beginning. I didn't know it got hit. But all that to say, I still remember being really mad because I knew I wasn't going back to the team house tonight. I knew I wasn't about to go do this mission, an important one that we had coming. I hadn't really fully thought it all out that it was going to eventually end my military career, and that I was going to be in the United States here in a few days. None of that. But I do remember feeling pissed, and I did not get to walk off the battlefield on my own terms. So it definitely came full circle for me.
No, that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. John, I'm going to turn it over to you for the next question for Khalid.
Yeah, Khalid, I kind of backstory on this question. I was able to attend a briefing back in March timeframe with Sarah Adams and David Boone Benson, and they talked about this, and I wanted to kind of get your take on this as being on the ground there. Are you seeing cooperation between Al-Qaida, ISKP, and Taliban's Haqqani network? Some of the things that they were talking about was a joining of these ideologies that were differing in the past, but now it seems like they're uniting against a common enemy. So what are you seeing on the ground there with regards to that?
It's not cooperation, it's coordination now. I mean, you've got Sirajuddin Haqqani and bin Laden sitting on top, and they're putting together an army of their own. And you have Sanullah Ghafari, Gulmorov, and you've got Saif al-Abdin, Adil. These guys are all working together now. I mean, there's the game that's being played in front of the U.S. that the Kandaharis don't get along with the Haqqanis, and the Taliban doesn't get along with IS. That's all drama. On the ground, they are all coordinating with each other. The Islamic State in Afghanistan is using Haqqani network safe houses. They're using Haqqani network training facilities, both in Pakistan and in Afghanistan. Nobody's bothering anybody. And the show is being put on for the rest of the world. You have, it's amazing to see that these guys were at one point enemies, that their ideologies were so different that they couldn't stand each other. Now they are so coordinated that the plan that is being made for the US is IS does this, Haqqani does this, Al-Qaeda does this. And it is unbelievable to see that three groups that you never thought could work together like this or operate in this way. And to know that inside of Pakistan, every Haqqani network training facility that exists in Pakistan, every safe house is being used by the Islamic State. And Balochistan itself has probably the largest Islamic State camp in the entire region, which is shocking to everybody because everyone said, they'll never coordinate. They'll never work together. They'll never spread this far. When the U.S. was in Afghanistan, everyone looked at ISKP as a minuscule counterforce that could never turn into anything. Now they're a major force inside of Afghanistan, but with the support of the Taliban, with the support of the Haqqani network.
Yeah, that's terrifying. And Jeff, I'm going to go to you. What do you think about this? Do you feel like these groups have grown stronger since the American pullout during the Biden administration, the botched pullout?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Simply because we just gave them tens of billions of dollars in weapons. And on top of that, we gave them a huge PR victory by us leaving in such a ridiculous manner. And so they can go to people and recruit and say, hey, we won. Come join us. Oh, by the way, we got a whole bunch of money and we got a whole bunch of really neat guns. So, yeah, how would they not be stronger? It's like saying, hey, come play on my team. I just won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. It's a rallying cry, really, that they're allowed to claim victory even though it was us admitting defeat more than them claiming victory. But it's sad.
At the end of the day, who's still the last man standing?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Randy, what's the most dangerous shift that you've seen in their capabilities with, given the fact that we left them billions of dollars worth of equipment, top tier, the latest in night vision, the latest in plate carriers and body armor and weapons and sights? What do you think is the most dangerous part of the shift in their capabilities?
What I've seen is tactics, right? You can have all that stuff you want, and if you don't have good tactics or strategy, it's not going to amount to what's going to amount to a defeat in the end of the day. And in my experience in Iraq, certainly the initial invasion, it almost didn't seem fair. You know what I mean? That's how poor the other side's tactics were. That's how poor their shooting was. There was only one ambush that ever meant anything, and we went through quite a few all the way to Baghdad, and they were all pitiful, in fact. But we did meet one in Baghdad. So I would say tactics and the level of training. And then as we've discovered about this hospital intel, and that points to exactly that, you know, and then some of the other things that are going to be laid out in this, the coordinated different attacks, and then the different layers of that is all very complicated stuff that really our enemies, certainly over there, never had any inkling of. I never saw that kind of capability in them.
So follow up, what would you, how are they learning these tactics? I don't know that we necessarily left them a DVD series on our tactics. Are they learning it from internet personalities, or, you know, tactics is something that's kind of passed down within the military, and unless you're going to these training events and learning from the people, it's not necessarily like something you learn from a book. So how are these tactics being disseminated to them?
You know, I don't know. Khalid may be able to speak to that since he's on the ground, but the reality is professionals, whether it's our own intelligence agencies, Russia, China, or any other number of agencies out there, some professionals are giving them some training. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And then you have to realize, whether it was Afghanistan or Iraq, what did they do all the time? They sat there and recorded us all the time, driving up and down the street, every single bomb that went off, every single sniper attack, every attack, period. There was somebody there documented with video, and probably more than one. So they've watched our tactics for a long time. But when you comply those inside the United States of what we're talking about, that lends to something else.
Yeah, and I would also say that there is a certain amount of influence from online former military influencers, myself being one of them, doing firearms training and stuff that's available to Americans. Stuff's also available to
right.
Foreign entities as well.
When it's on the web, anybody can access it.
Yeah.
Well, if I can pick up, Randy, you guys have got this on pretty much where it is. What we've seen in Pakistan and Afghanistan is it's really difficult to explain, because it started from Telegram videos. We have gigabytes, and I mean gigabytes of videos of how to build bombs, how tactical shooting is done, how targeting is done, how snipers are operational. These guys were taught step by step from videos that they had made of U.S. military. That's how they began. Then, if you remember, while the U.S. was in Afghanistan, there was a story that ran through the U.S. media that Russia was offering bounties on U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan. That later proved to be true. Now, whether Russia was training the Taliban at that point in time, we don't know, but the IRGC definitely was. Iran definitely took it. They did a lot of training with the Taliban. A lot of the Taliban, Al-Qaida leadership was based inside of Iran. They got a lot of training. They got a lot of understanding from there. They brought that back. Then you had ISIS leadership start coming in from Iraq and start training the Taliban after the U.S. left. You saw this network start to build. And as that network built, they became more proficient. The ragtag mujahideen that existed during the Soviet invasion no longer exists now. This is a professional military that's operating inside of Afghanistan. They have all of the weaponry. They have all of the gear. and they are well trained. I mean, if you watch their training videos now, the propaganda videos they put out now of their training, it's like you're watching a professional military in operation. And they have gotten to the point where new technology is introduced in the Western world, and they have it in their hands. Like the Taliban in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, are using drones. They're using drones now to drop mortars on homes and on military camps. And everyone's going, where is this all coming from? Where are they training from? How are they getting all of this? Russia is hand in hand with the Taliban. They were the first country to recognize the Taliban government. They removed them from the foreign terror organizations list. China has made a deal with the Taliban. We have spoken to the Chinese over and over and over to not believe Sirajuddin Haqqani. Whatever Haqqani is telling you, he is telling you the second side of the story. He's flipping the coin and telling you one, when what's actually happening is absolutely different. China has gotten on board with the Taliban. You have everybody helping the Taliban turn into a professional military now. That is now being exported into Syria. That is now being exported into Iraq. That is now being exported into Yemen. That is now being exported into Lebanon. It's the global training base now for every terrorist group in the world.
So Khalid, I've got the next question that gets into some specifics, but you and I spoke earlier in the week, and I'm going to pull up a screen on the latest generation night vision that we have here in America. And you made a comment that the bad guys, we left this behind and they have it, and it makes them much more formidable than they were previously.
Yep.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
The equipment they've got now, it's like John was saying, you have left them with some of the most high-tech equipment that they could have never. These are guys that only understood Stinger missiles. Shoulder mount Stinger missiles were the only thing they understood. AK-47s were the only thing they understood. Now they've got AR-15s. Now they've got RPGs. They've got night vision goggles. They have got radar systems. They have got things that they never dreamed of. And they're using it now against the Pakistani military. They're using it against the Iraqi military. They're using it against the Israelis. They're using it against everybody now. Wherever they get the opportunity to sell it, they're selling the equipment.
I'm pretty sure that Mike Sterling said this type of night vision that we're looking at on screen right now costs our military somewhere around $45,000 or $50,000 per soldier per headset.
Yeah.
Randy, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sure it does, because even when they were back to 7 Deltas, which are crap to what we have today, those were good back then. And what I'll say is that's when I first came in the Army, those things were going out. So that's how old they are. I came in 2000 and 2001. So that's how old those things were. That's one of our biggest advantages. It's why we say we own the night. And that was one of the things that we had over them this entire time. So the fact that we left that stuff, the only other thing I will say is whether it's those or even the tanks and all the other stuff, maybe not the AR-15s, but the tanks and stuff, all that takes a certain level of sustainment. And it's not going to last them forever. But the fact is they do have some, and that the night vision device is crazy, man. Why would you leave that stuff? That should be, somebody should be charged criminally for that.
Yeah, we're talking, just to clarify on that, we're talking Gen 3. So it's 3rd generation, L3 Harris, PVS 31s, panoramics. These are, the low end is like $16,000 to $18,000 for like the binocular, the panoramics, $45,000. Dozens, if not hundreds of those kind of sets of night vision.
We've seen pictures recently of Taliban fighters, their new commando force, with these night vision goggles on their helmets. And we just went, oh my God, how are we going to fight these guys now? The advantage that we had against the Taliban has disappeared because of all the weaponry that was left behind by the Biden failed pullout. And we don't understand again, I'll put the question to Jeff. Our understanding was when the withdrawal was planned to come out of Afghanistan, that all that weaponry was supposed to be moved into Pakistan, and then from Pakistan moved to U.S. bases around the world. Now, the way Biden pulled out and he left everything there, you literally just armed the entire terrorist world against the US. And for me, because we deal with this all the time, it doesn't make sense to us that why would you make such a foolish move?
You know, it's a really good question. I'm afraid I can't answer because I wasn't there. But I know Trump had commented fairly recently that when he knew General Milley was an idiot, is when he says, "Well, what are you going to do with all the equipment? We're going to leave it there because it's cheaper than bringing it home." And he goes, "You have $150 million airplane. Fly it to frickin' India." You know, it says that it costs less than $150 million. But that was their attitude was they'd already written it off, and it was just now if you're leaving it for a friendly government, that's one thing, and that it was kind of the original plan. But even then, you don't leave them your best stuff.
No,
but
we never have.
Yeah, but once the country started falling apart, man, they should have just gone into overtime getting that stuff out of there, but they didn't. Or at least, you know, we used to do, you know, if the enemy's going to capture your artillery piece, you put thermite down the tube and make it useless to them. We didn't do that either.
Right. So, Khalid, your comments actually lead to the next question, a little bit more specifics. How big are these training camps that all the bad guys have, and what are they focusing on? Is it urban warfare, chemical weapons, or something else?
Well, when you start talking about the different groups, like for example, HTS has a camp in I think it's northeastern Afghanistan that is 12,000 fighters. This is Jolani's HTS, has 12,000 fighters inside of Afghanistan being trained. And when you start moving down the line, I mean, the smallest camp we've seen is maybe 500 people. And suicide bomber camps exist. You have complete military setups now. I mean, if you look at the 201 Khalid bin Walid Brigade, that is the elite force. That is the absolute elite force of the Taliban. They are the main suppliers of weaponry and training to all of the terror groups, all of them. And when you start looking at where they're based in Kunduz, from there, everything they're moving around, people are getting trained, people are getting expertise. You aren't hearing about the blow up in a suicide camp where someone was putting together a bomb and all of a sudden the vest blew up. The expertise now is beyond what we ever thought. So it's not just that we're talking about warfare. We know there are 3 camps inside of Afghanistan that are chemical warfare camps. They are bio warfare labs. They have weaponized sarin. They are working on anthrax. There are 2 people that are very key to the Al-Qaida chemical weapons, bioweapons structure that are missing in action. No one knows where they are. And one of them is known as the CEO of Anthrax. The other one is a chemical weapons specialist. We have also heard visually, we have not seen yet, but we've heard there are 2 nuke camps as well inside of Afghanistan, one outside of Kabul. And the fact that you're now actually thinking about building a nuclear weapon of some kind makes this game very different. When in the second hour, when we're talking about the hospital threat, we were turned on to biological and chemical weapons by something that was said to us by one of our assets inside of Afghanistan. He said, you know, they're talking about sarin. They're talking about distribution through ventilation systems. And when we heard that, we went, wait a minute, even if it's a 5% chance that a chemical weapon is going to be used, a biological weapon is going to be used, we need to add that into our assessment. And Afghanistan is now, it's not, you know, the ragtag group anymore. This is way high level. You've also got access now to 100+ chemical weapons labs inside of Syria because of Jolani. that you can move weapons from there. You have Iraq as well. The level of attack, the level of capability that we're looking at now with Al-Qaida, Islamic State, it's just unbelievable. And for us sitting in Pakistan, they're going to try it on us first because we're the closest, we're the best test dummies for them. So they're going to try it on us. Once they figure out how it works, then they're going to use it in Europe and they're going to use it in the US.
That's a scary prospect, Khalid. So, I mean, from where I'm sitting, this sounds like we're talking about a networked threat that's bigger, better trained, more coordinated than anything we ever saw before 9/11. And you sent me a map, and I want to pull it up here so everybody can see it. It's showing where there's known terrorists here in America. And when we were speaking earlier in the week, you mentioned that there's just AQ alone has something like 12,000 terrorists inside of our borders in these red states. I'd just like to hear your general comments on this. And then to keep the conversation flowing, Jeff and Randy, I want to hear your thoughts on how they've kept these sleeper cells essentially undetected for years. And, what are your concerns with their ability to basically hide amongst us and not be found? But Khalid, I'll go to you first to speak to this map.
Well, you have to understand when we were talking about the Al-Qaida of before, they were depending on Muslim countries, intelligence agencies to smuggle them into the US and to get them set up there somehow and provide them with financial support and get them hidden. What you're seeing now is that every Thursday in Afghanistan is Terrorist Thursday at the Ministry of Interior, what would be the passport office, where terrorists are getting passports made and they're flying off to every country in the world with an Afghani passport. So they've entered through legal means. They've entered through the border. The U.S. border with Mexico is also the most porous border because of Biden. And the number of people that came through the cartels, because Haqqani and the Taliban have been supplying drugs to Mexico for so long that they used that same network to move humans and weapons into the US. So once they moved into the US, they had a telephone number with them. As soon as they crossed into the US, they would call that number. They would be told where to come. There would be a house set up. There would be a job set up. And they would never have to meet anyone. They would never have to interact with anyone. They would just do what they were supposed to do and wait. Now, the other thing you need to understand, and it's part of your second question that you had for Jeff, is how are they so easily able to hide? There are two books that are being taught to every person being sent into a foreign country from Afghanistan. One is a counterintelligence book that was written by Al-Qaeda leadership itself. The second is a security book that teaches you exactly how to meld into society. So what would be normally haram for a Muslim is now okay so that you can hide amongst the public. So if you need to drink, if you need to have a girlfriend, if you need to date, you're allowed to do that as long as you need to. The key handlers are set up inside of homes and they never leave. There's someone that runs errands for them. There's someone that does grocery shopping for them, but those handlers never come out of their houses. But the normal fighter is inside your society. They are moving inside the US and they are protected. They are employed. They're getting paid under the table and they're very happy living where they are. And as soon as they get the green light from Afghanistan, they go. And the biggest worry we have is in two places. Number one, sanctuary cities. Number two, college towns. Because those are two places where an immigrant can hide so easily, whether he be legal or illegal. He can disappear into the public and no one will even question him. Put a book bag on your shoulder and walk across the university campus. No one even knows.
That's crazy. So Jeff, before you pick it up from there, I just want to mention that Khalid lived here in America for 25 years. So he's very familiar with America in general. But Jeff and then Randy, I mean, how do these guys remain so undetected? Just pick up where Khalid left off. And how hard is it for our intelligence guys like yourself, Jeff, to find these guys? Seems very labor intensive to me. You're on mute, Jeff.
Sorry. Yeah, it is very labor intensive, but it's kind of the hide in plain sight thing. But they're not running around wearing keffiyehs and things like that. I mean, they're blending in, and we saw it with the 9/11 guys. I was in Atlanta at the time, and a lot of them were in Atlanta or had been in Atlanta, and their neighbors are like, "Yeah, I recognize the guy on TV. He used to live next door to me, but he was a regular guy. He wore polos and chinos and topsiders, and he went to the strip club, and he went bar hopping with the guys, and so they don't act like jihadis, and so people don't think they're jihadis. They act like, I hate to say it, they act like drunken college students a lot of the times. The strip clubs doing all that stuff, and for them, it was their last hurrah before they're going to kill themselves. So why not have a good time? And they were given permission to do it. They were not going to be judged for participating in all these haram activities.
Yep.
Thanks, Jeff. So, Randy, question for you, just because Khalid brought it up, sanctuary cities, pardon me. I mean, just speak to the concept of sanctuary cities, not getting guys. We're seeing guys now, arrested 5, 6, 7, 8 times for violent crimes, and they just let them go. So how are we going to catch the terrorists?
Well, you're not going to catch them that way. Our biggest issue is whether it be the FBI or other intelligence agencies have been focused on all the wrong things. Whether that's by design or not, we can speculate all day long. But we know, and we've mentioned it on this program many times over the last couple of years, as far as most of our folks in this country at that, in those departments and agencies, white middle age men were the biggest threat to our republic. So, focusing on that kind of stuff, we've had people focus on Trump. And then you have all these other things going on, whether these sanctuary cities, look, they're more concerned about keeping them in here than anything that's going on in the rest of the world, even when it's about to come down on us. They could care less about any of that because they're trying to push whatever their agenda is. And, whether it's a failure of our intelligence agencies and federal law enforcement, that's debatable. But you have to admit, letting all those people in over 4 years is pretty negligent, right? That I would call a dereliction of duty, whether it was from the president all the way down, all of them, everybody, because you let it happen. As I told you, I wasn't, even my own governor, I'm in the state of Texas. He didn't do anything about it for at least 2 years until it come up to about he was needed to be reelected. Then he actually did something about the border, but didn't stop all the people coming through. And so I think that all the arms of our government that could stop all this or curb some of it have been focused on the wrong issues. And that's why where we are. And when you allow sanctuary cities, you know what I mean? Those mayors, maybe even the governors of those states, they need to be held accountable because it leads to this type of thing and it puts us at risk. When they talk about Trump and middle-aged white American males being the threat, and here we have, we have real terrorists moving in, and whether they come with a passport. Now, those that came with a passport, if you came from Afghanistan with a passport, we should be able to run those folks down pretty easily. People that came across the border illegally, well, they should have probably when they ran into them on the border, but we didn't do that. So yeah, it's a big problem.
One quick comment before John goes. J.J. Carroll, 24 years CBP special agent, said to me, during his 24 years, he arrested 100,000 people at the border, San Diego sector. 5 of them were SIAs, the special interest aliens. And we know that there was at least 200,000 SIAs that were initially interdicted by the border and let go into our country. 200,000. He said the real number is probably 1 million SIAs.
And there you go. That covers all the people Khalid's talking about right now.
Yeah, it does. John, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Yeah, Khalid, question for you. You have been saying that they're saying that these attacks are going to make 9/11 look like a blip.
Yeah.
What exactly does that mean to the layperson that may be watching this stream tonight? Like, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about a singular large attack what we've heard recently about broad spread out attacks in more small communities or even medium-sized communities. Can you elaborate on that?
The way we always explain it to people is that we start off with a very simple statement. Today is September 10th, 2001. It's impossible there's an attack on U.S. soil. There's no way a terrorist could carry out an attack on U.S. soil. That was the belief before 9/11. And that's where we are today. And for the past year and a half, Sarah, myself, Dave, Sean Ryan, Legend, have been beating our heads against the wall, trying to get people to listen, trying to get people to wake up and look at what's happening inside the United States. If you look at our website, we started tracking back in April, swatting calls, bomb hoaxes, explosive devices that were found, and we started tracking them on a Google map and started laying them out. When you started looking at the pattern, slowly it moved from swatting calls on people's houses to commercial buildings, to schools, to churches, to airports. And the progression moved that way. What we saw is that what you're trying to figure out is when we make a threat, where do people congregate? When they come out of that shopping mall, where are they congregating at? That's the second attack. If you remember January 1st, when the attack happened in New Orleans, the New Orleans FBI flat out would not believe that this was ISIS inspired. And somehow in April, the guy who masterminded the attack or inspired the attack from Iraq was arrested by Iraqi security officials. And he said, yeah, I was behind helping figure out the New Orleans attack. To this day, and I've had this conversation with a number of people in the intelligence world, that if you look at the number of attacks that have happened, even if you look at Palm Springs it doesn't make sense. An empty building, a fertility center, and there's a huge hospital a minute and a half away. Either you got cold feet or you detonated in the wrong place. Because our assessment is that these are all tier 2 cities. Tier 2 cities. 100,000, 500,000. That's the population limit. And the reason we're saying that this is what we're looking at is because you have no counterterrorism force. Your SWAT team isn't strong enough to move in a multifaceted approach. So if you were to hit a school, a shopping mall, and a hospital, you wouldn't have enough first responders to go to all the places, which means something would happen major one place or another. Now, the way we've laid this out is a lot of people are looking at 10/7 and saying, you know, what happened in Israel is going to be the pattern of what happens in the US. We're saying, no, what happened in Mumbai is what's going to be the pattern of what happens in the US. Because if you look at what happened in Mumbai, they started off with a cafe. They sent off numerous teams, cafe, synagogue, a train station, and they all congregated at the Taj Hotel. And it was a 4-day standoff. And that's seeing this happen.
Yeah, and there's also some similarities with the Paris attacks as well, where they attacked multiple locations at the same time, held hostages in the Eagles of Death metal concert, I think was the name of the band there, and multiple people got killed in that, and they had hostages in there. So they have used this tactic in several large-scale attacks.
What you're seeing, John, is they've been testing this out place by place. Whether it be Europe, whether it be the Moscow attack, they have tested out every single tactic to figure out what works where. How can we make it work? If you look at the New Orleans attack again, twice in the media, a story came out that there was an explosive found that had never been found before, that had never been used before, and that story disappeared. What happened to that explosive?
Exactly. That's the $64,000 question. Jeff, let's talk a little bit and dig a little bit more into what makes a tier 2 city such a appealing target for these terrorists and why they would pick something like that instead of something larger scale, say New York City or Chicago or Dallas or LA. What makes them, adding on to the stuff that Khalid already laid out with the police forces and first responders, but other things that might entice them to pick those cities?
Well, we discussed this the other day. It's a big enough target to make it worth hitting, but it's not big enough to have the resources to combat you. Most cities, 100,000, 200,000 people, generally, they have multiple hospitals, but they usually only have one
Real trauma center.
One trauma center, really big trauma center. You take that out, they're pretty well screwed. The rest are glorified, ready clinics.
Yep.
They have a police force and they have SWAT, but not enough to handle multiple attacks.
Yep.
You look at New York City. New York City has a lot of hospitals, but New York City also has like 15, 20,000 cops. And I mentioned this the other day. If New York City police was a country, it'd actually have a good-sized military. There's a lot of countries that have fewer soldiers than New York City has cops. And then you add transit police and everybody else too. There's a lot there. Another thing about a tier 2 city is, especially if you pick one that doesn't have a military installation anywhere nearby. Now, if I was a terrorist, San Antonio, Texas probably would not be my target because there's like 4 or 5 military bases in the city limits. Waco, Texas, probably not high on my list because you got Fort Hood right there. El Paso, same thing. You got Fort Bliss. But if you pick a city that's it's got nothing around it, no military around it, because if the police are overwhelmed and the state police are, the next thing they're going to do is they're going to call military, National Guard, that kind of stuff. And so if you're going to plan an attack, you want to do it at a place where those secondary responders are far away and are going to take time to get organized and get there.
Yeah. So just to give an example, we're talking about a level 1 trauma center. That means a trauma center that can handle any type of medical emergency, be it a bomb blast, gunshot wounds.
Right.
The city of Chicago has, I think, 10 or 8 million people, something like that. It's a very large city. Maybe in the entire Chicagoland area, they have 6 for a city that large.
I think
you're talking about
only have 1. It may only have
Grady
Memorial.
Right. So you're looking at, even a city that has millions of people in it only has 6 level 1 trauma centers. So you talk about, I could give an example of a city that's an hour and a half away from me that we literally were just in a couple of weeks ago with my family. Evansville, Indiana has 115,000 people.
Yep.
1 big hospital.
Yep.
And it's not close to any military bases.
Yeah.
So this is, these kinds of things, and guess what? People go there all the time for weekend getaways and all of that kind of stuff with their families. I just did that. So it is something to keep aware of for sure. And Randy, I'm going to go to you. We're giving kind of a final word on what it would look like in a metroplex type situation where you have 2 or 3 cities. So Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington would be one of those. I was actually very close to there when I was in training in the military, and we would go down there on the weekends. And it seems like one giant city, but it's actually 3 different cities combined there. And we have a couple of examples of that in the United States. But what would that look like, the chaos inside of a metroplex?
Well, I think that you would see a mass panic, you know what I mean? And then and if there's not enough, obviously, it's no different than work traffic in the morning, right? And if everybody got out and tried to leave, no one's going anywhere. I don't think it's likely they're going to hit a big target like this, but if they did, I suppose if you hit a big major event here, you know what I mean, and you hit a couple of other locations around the area, you probably could do a significant amount of damage casualty wise because of the amount of people here and certainly the proximity. That it would be. But the hospital thing, I don't know that would work out so well here because there's definitely in this whole area, because you also have Denton, right? Nobody ever mentions Denton, but it's grown up quite a bit. in the last 30 years, where 30 years ago you wouldn't even have mentioned it. But now it probably, I think it also has a level 1 trauma center. So there's quite a few of those in this area, but still you could definitely, by messing up some of the freeways and some of the centers around here, you could cause quite a bit of chaos and panic. And then you would have free reign just to mow people down. Or if you were dropping some sort of gas, it would be extremely devastating.
The one thing about Texas, and it's kind of not, sounds like I'm being facetious, but I'm not. A lot of people carry.
Everybody.
So if I'm a terrorist and I start shooting, there's a good chance I'm going to get return fire really quick. Now, if you do it in places that don't have a history of gun ownership or gun culture, or it's illegal to own guns,
yes,
New York City, Chicago, that's a safer target. Criminals love gun-free zones.
Well, Jeff's right. If you see a truck in Texas, there's at least one gun in there, and everybody knows how many trucks are in Texas.
Yeah. So actually, here would be a good scenario to kind of gameplay this out. I know we're running close on time, but Rockford, Illinois has 146,000 people. It's outside of the Chicagoland area, but close. And it's still in that northern part. I live in Southern Illinois. We are gun-toting, like flipping off the fat man governor all the time. But up in the northern part, gun ownership is a lot more sparse, and it's not as prevalent. So you take a city like a Rockford, Illinois, 146,000, probably has one trauma center in it. I didn't check that, but that would be kind of one of those ideal targets. A blue state, medium-sized tier 2 city, you're going to have a lot more. Yes, those kinds of things. I don't think they would go to Texas necessarily.
No, it wouldn't be smart. Now, you could go east of Houston, where I'm from, and it's a lot different down there. There's not very many level 1 trauma centers, and all the oil refineries. Every plant is down there. Yeah, everybody, Exxon, Mobil, it's all down.
Yeah. Sacramento would be another one in California.
Yes,
and that's absolutely capital too.
Yeah.
So
further to Jeff's point, Garland, which is DFW area.
Yeah.
This was I want to say it was 2019, 2015. Pardon me.
Oh, I remember this.
I remember that.
Yeah. So there was essentially a cop who was working a side job to make money for security, and there were a couple guys who wanted to attack this art display that was making fun of the Prophet Muhammad.
Yep.
And that cop saved the day.
They dropped him in a quick second. He didn't even get out of the driveway.
Yeah, just an amazing response. So we're at the end of chapter 1. We're going to transition into chapter 2 here, but I'd say that basically chapter 1, we've got a pretty clear picture that terrorist groups are not just rebuilding overseas. They're already here inside of our borders. And next, we're going to dive into like the attack playbook itself, how Al-Qaida and others plan to seize trauma centers, potentially deploy sarin nerve gas, and it spread massive amounts of fear across America and probably shut our country down. But there are some things that you can do to prepare and to protect your family. One of the things I want to point out quickly here is that today's sit rep, if you go to survivaldispatchnews.com, this sit rep at the top here, if you click on that, there's a whole bunch of information that Khalid gave us. So scrolling down, right there, you'll see a bunch of links. These are all videos and articles from Khalid that go into great detail on the topic tonight. So just go to survivaldispatchnews.com. You can sign up for a free account. You don't have to pay. Paying members do get some perks, but sign up for a free account. The only thing that you wouldn't get in this sit rep are just a handful of additional links that aren't from Khalid at the end, but they're not critical. His links are the most critical ones. But Jeff and Randy, I appreciate your time and insight very much. Yep. I'm going to bring Mike Glover and Mike Sterling on stage, and we're going to go into chapter 2. So just give me a second here and make everything happen. All right, Mike Sterling. and the ghost of Mike Glover.
There he is.
What's up, bro?
Speak of the devil. So I appreciate y'all hanging out backstage and joining us so quickly. For those of you who don't know, Mike Sterling, 30-year master EOD tech, 23 years in the service. Now he owns the oldest privately owned EOD firm in the country. So he's still working in that field. He went on a ton of missions with guys like Mike Glover, Spec Ops soldier, Green Beret, and then CIA GRS as well. So let's just jump right into this right off the bat. And Khalid, walk our listeners through what AQ and the others are specifically planning for these attacks that we just got into at the end of chapter 1.
Okay, well, the attacks basically start from the idea of creating mass panic to begin with. So what you're looking at is shopping malls, commercial centers, office buildings, schools, churches, places where people will congregate, where you can send in 2, 3, 5 shooters and start opening fire and start creating a problem. Now, the AQ strategy is AQ will concentrate on the airports. They're going to hijack airplanes. That's the big part of the attack. What the Islamic State has been charged with, has been entrusted with, is the lower level coordination, where you carry out the ground urban assault, and Al-Qaida will go after the airplanes at the airports, and they will fly them into different targets inside of the US. Now, the problem that we have here is that you have a lot of moving parts involved in this. Not only do you have schools, churches, commercial centers, shopping centers, and hospitals, but you also have first responders that uniforms have been stolen, vehicles have been made up to look like ambulances, look like police cars, that they can roll into these locations and detonate. And this is something that we have been very closely watching, that there's been a lot of mysterious disappearances of uniforms and decals and markings that would be used on first responder vehicles around the US. And as they disappear, that mentality of using first responder vehicles starts to make a lot more sense to us. So look at it this way. There's an attack, for example, we'll take Madison, Wisconsin. Nice university town. You hit Madison, you've got a university where you can have an active shooter. That draws your police force to one place. Shopping center hits another place. 2 schools with a car ramming hits another place. You've distributed the police force. Now, once the police force is distributed, you don't know the real police from the fake police that are coming in. Once that fake police vehicle comes in, he detonates. He's created another mass casualty event. Where does that mass casualty event move to? The hospital. And the center attack point is the hospital. Because once you have control of that hospital, you have between 500 and 1,000 people inside that hospital at any point in time. And inside of a hospital, you can plant explosives along the foundations, detonate it, and bring it down. The reason I bring it up the way I do is because after we put this out, we went to the CIA first, we went to the FBI, we went to everybody and said, please listen, this is what's going on, and nobody wanted to listen. We put it out on X. And I literally put out a 2-line tweet back in April and said, this is what's about to happen. And from there, we started talking to hospitals, we started talking to law enforcement, we started talking to fire departments that were interested in what was going on and how it was going to happen. From there, we developed our first assessment. That first assessment's on our website. That didn't have profiles of attackers. It didn't have target cities. It didn't have an immigration pattern of where people were moving to inside the US. In the second assessment that we put out, we went into specific detail. What your attacker profile is, who are you looking for, what the skill set is, what are the warning signs that you should look for. You are looking at mass panic in tier 2 cities, 100,000 to 500,000 people, where you overwhelm the system. And by overwhelming the system, you force it to collapse. Once the system collapses, the terrorists take more advantage of it. on the backside of that, while the coordinated attack is happening in your urban centers, Al-Qaeda takes the airports. Now, if you remember, there was a video that came out from a woman in Denver. A lot of people blew it off. It's on our website as well. She's reading a prepared statement. And the prepared statement, when you listen to her, she's warning us about something. And when you go back and you repeat it and repeat it, she starts talking about an attack. And she says, you cannot stop what we have planned. So if anyone thought we were, a lot of people said, you know, you're fear mongering. We said, we're not fear mongering. Look at what's happening. Look at January 1st. Look at Palm Springs. Look at the Palm Springs attack was a 1.5 minutes away from a tier 1 hospital. Just open up a Google map and look at where the Palm Springs fertility clinic was and where that tier 1 hospital is. It was 2 minutes away from each other. So we have war gamed this thing out. We have played this thing out. We've tried to figure out every single way that this could possibly carry it out. And we've tried to figure out how you can stop it as well. But for some reason, and this is why we keep asking this question over and over, why is nobody talking about terrorism in the US anymore? Everyone's talking cartel, and no one's talking about Al-Qaeda. No one's talking about the Islamic State. No one is talking about terrorism anymore. And whenever any type of explosion happens, any type of an attack happens, it's very quickly dusted off, story made up, and pushed off to the side. And it's never discussed again. And for us, we're looking at from a counterterrorism point of view, going, there is, for some reason, there is a schedule, a plan, a strategy of some kind that we don't let this thing start to blow up. Let this thing turn into a conversation point of some kind, that America could be attacked. Again, I go back to the statement. It's 10th September 2001, where nothing can happen in the U.S.
That's a brutal picture, Khalid. I want to pull up a map and then go to Mike and want to make sure that I've got both of them on stage here for it as well. So, and I've got Brandy still on stage. Let me swap that out for Mike. Okay, apologies. So these are the 20 largest cities in the country that only have one level 1 trauma center. And when you were speaking, Khalid, I was looking at it thinking, yeah, Denver is one of them. Smack dab in the middle of the country there. But I know the intel says 10 to 15, but what I did is I put a map together, the 20 largest cities with level 1 trauma centers. And then I put another map together of the top 20 cities with a much smaller population, under 280,000, that have one level 1 trauma center. There's not a lot of overlap between the two of them. So there's a lot of potential targets across the board. And I'll go to Mike Sterling first. Mike, how underprepared are we for the reality of this? You're on mute and froze up or something there, Mike.
Sorry, it wouldn't let go. Yeah, I mean, you remember I've been screaming this from the rooftops for how many years now? And of course, you know, I was even screaming this kind of stuff during the war, and everybody was like, "Shut up, Mike, you're paranoid." Yeah, well, you know, we kept on having these. Khalid, you're following the playbook. It's the #1 playbook. We were dealing with this kind of stuff. Mike, you were there. You saw we were pulling these types of attacks off of the street all the time. Multi-front, multi-prong attacks. God, how many vehicle-borne IEDs did we stop from hitting the hospitals there in Shab and Adamia, for crying out loud? I mean, that was all the time, because you get somebody from Badr Corps would be in the hospital, so Jam would want to kill that guy with a car bomb. You know, it was like, okay, guys, slow down a little bit. And you wound up with these massive perimeters around the hospitals. We don't have that here in the US. And yeah, those are wonderful targets. And yeah, Chris, I was looking at what you've got for the secondary cities, and yeah, Huntsville's on there. And yeah, that's a nice, fat, juicy target in this town. But I mean, these are exactly the targets, multi-prong, multi-hit. You overwhelm the operational capacity of local law enforcement, and it's going to be a good 3 hours before anybody can get into there to help them.
Yep.
Yeah, that's mind blowing. It's hard to get your head wrapped around. So, Mike Glover, you have an intel background as well. So, Khalid asked the question, why is there no focus on this terrorist threat? And my question to you is there really no focus here in America for that, or is it happening quietly behind the scenes, or what are your feelings as an ex-intel guy?
Well, I know personally the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard and I are friends. I know the future, head of CTC, Counterterrorism Center, Joe Kent, is going to be confirmed as the head of CTC. And he's a former ground branch officer, a former Orange operator, or TFO operator. So, look, I'm not surprised by the assessments. I mean, that's typically what happens, right? Everybody in the intel world who has some experience in counterterrorism is going to do deep dive analysis on this and assess that there's likely going to be an attack. I mean, I like Khalid's example of September 10th. I constantly tell people we have a September 10th mentality. We're complacent.
Yeah.
But to expect, for example, the American people to think otherwise is just fiction. I mean, it's not going to happen. But that's what these type of things are for. And then to have the intelligence community think about these things, they have to be reprioritized in their focus. They have to reestablish their mission and their purpose. And that takes good leadership. I think that's happening. My concern is, as somebody who just is the preparedness guy, and a sergeant major, right? Maybe I get it from my team sergeant days or something. A lot of my team guys come in with problems, and that's fine. If you have a problem, what's the solution? You know, I mean, like, everybody could complain about all the problems they have, but what's the solution? Well, I can tell you from experience in teaching law enforcement for 20 plus years, even when I was on active duty, we were doing that. Law enforcement, including federal law enforcement, the 200 plus tactical elements that exist across the different agencies, local law enforcement for sure, even the biggest departments, are ill prepared. I mean, I taught the California Highway Patrol for the first time ever small unit tactics 3 years ago. These guys brought me in and they said, hey, we had an officer killed, and the officer was killed on the side of the road by a guy with an M4, and it was a motor patrol officer on a motorcycle. And they have shift guns. They have AR-15s that go per shift, meaning they're not issued to individual officers. They're rotated through a 12-hour shift. So they hand over a gun that has a board 0, and that's their weapon system, without an optic, by the way. There's no red dot. So the CHP, probably the highest funded department in the country, these guys make $200,000+ a year, by the way, well paid, don't even have optics on their M4s. So if you look at JTTF, I have experience with working with them, FBI, HRT, the regional SWAT teams. We used to train with the local regional teams when I was at Carson. When I was a recce sniper team sergeant, we used to work with those guys with HRT guys. And so you take two top-tiered organizations teaching regional SWAT guys, and it's like the difference between varsity and peewee leagues, right? I mean, you're like the team leader in the regional SWAT team for the FBI out of Colorado is telling a guy to go left and another guy to go right.
Yeah.
So if there's any expectation that as first responders, they're going to be able to mitigate this, it's not going to happen. And then lastly, just a couple points, 2013, the Boston Marathon bombing.
Yeah.
The two guys, Chechen backgrounds, inspired by Al-Qaida through the magazine Inspire. They go out, they do an attack, they kill 3 people, injure 260 plus people, and it takes a long time to take these guys down. These dudes were haphazardly trained. If you, like Khalid's saying, if you have a group of guys with capability, just like we were hitting targets with low-level guys that were just worthless, and it was a real quick target set, like objective secure with bad guys in a couple minutes, versus foreign fighters that were fighting who came from Benghazi, the Green Mountains of Benghazi, you're talking about two different games. And the world, especially the United States, is not prepared for that type of hazard. Last example is the DC sniper. This is an attack that lasted. They were inspired by jihadists as well. But these two guys used a blue sedan. I know this specifically because I was in DC in 02 at the time, right before I went to SF selection. I was in the infantry. And these two guys were shooting an AR through a loophole in a sedan for 8 months. They killed 17 people and injured a lot more. And it's like, we think this is going to be bad. It's like the next question for me is like, what are we going to do about it? And I hope we get into that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Mike. Actually, I wanted to ask you, and same goes for Khalid and Mike Sterling as well. What can we learn from Mumbai, Beslan, Bataclan? Are there anything there that stands out to you, Mike Glover? And we will get into your last point, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, all these attacks are complex, deliberate attacks. The difference between that and a hasty loser who just, blows a head gasket is when you have somebody who's deliberately planning an attack, the goal is not casualties in the initial event. It actually could be, it could actually be psychological. I mean, the DC snipers, unbeknownst to them likely, because they just were into shooting people in the stomach, in the Home Depot, they killed an FBI agent right next to the Barnes & Noble I used to frequent. They were just looking for the opportune moment. When you take somebody who's deliberately trained and they have a plan of attack, they're going to do what Khalid was talking about. They're going to go into a situation where they bait everybody in because they know the SOPs. And as soon as they come in, they're going to clack something off and create another secondary attack. And whenever I see these attacks that happen where it's like one thing is going on, I always ask myself, what is the viability that this is a deliberate attack or comprehensive attack, and there's going to be something else. The Mandalay Bay shooter is a great example because the shooter that shot from Mandalay Bay into the country music concert, the Jason Aldean concert, his entire goal was not to create casualties necessarily there. It was to get the crowd moving to create mass casualties by hitting fuel tanks. But he failed the ballistic challenge. He doesn't know terminal ballistics, right? He doesn't know what his weapon systems are capable of. And so luckily, everybody that started fleeing, they just ran into these tanks, and he sparked the tanks, but he was never able to ignite it. He didn't have enough heat and enough pressure, right? So what I think is going to happen is, just like the guys have lined out, there's going to be a deliberate, comprehensive attack. And the ask for me in this conversation is, if we're going around and we're doing consultation and warning people, have the solutions, and then coach them on that. I just talked to a deputy here last night who's a local friend of mine, and was talking to him about issues like this in anticipation for this conversation. And he's like, we're ill prepared. I mean, we're in a small town of 17,000 people, but that's the same answer everybody's getting across the board. And that's my biggest concern. It's like, I've seen what that looks like on target, where you're like, oh, this is just the everyday attack. I got nods and a laser. You got no chance. And then all of a sudden, these dudes run out with night vision and lasers that are zeroed, and watches that are timed, boots that are bootstrapped, and they're ready for work. I mean, they're going to war. And that's my biggest fear is we're complacent and we're not ready for a real fight.
Yeah, that's scary. Same question to you, Khalid, and then Mike. Is there anything we can learn from these other attacks? And then John, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, if you look at it from the point of view we're looking at it from, they have run every one of these tactics around the world. We've seen them in Moscow, we've seen them in Paris, we've seen them in London, we've seen them in Germany. Before the Olympics and before the Champions League trophy in Germany and in Paris, we were screaming then because the Islamic State propaganda was openly saying we're going to hit the World Cup, we're going to hit the Champions League trophy. I mean, in their posters, they were literally putting the picture of the stadium, and if you were smart enough and you could figure out which stadium it was, you could figure out what city it was. We were talking to German intelligence. We were talking to French intelligence. We were guiding them. And if you noticed, for a long time, nobody was paying attention. All of a sudden, all these arrests started happening throughout Europe. and they were 16-year-olds, they were 15-year-olds, they were 20-year-olds. People they caught a 16-year-old female that had learned how to make a bomb in the Netherlands, and she had learned it from Islamic State propaganda material that was available online. This is what you're dealing with. I mean, when you start talking about how do we stop this, you have to first get to the point of, do we actually accept that this can happen? That's why that's why I keep going back to look at September 10th, 2001. On that day, everyone believed that there could never be a terrorist attack on U.S. soil. And what happened? And it happened in such a way that no one even believed that it could be done that way. Blowing up a building, that had happened in Oklahoma City. It had happened to the World Trade Center, a car bomb brought in by Timothy McVeigh. It had been done. An airplane? No one had thought about an airplane. Yet Al-Qaeda had been working on that plan for years to put that together. That was $500,000, $500,000. Al-Qaeda, the Taliban has been getting $40 million a week since 2001. Think about the level they're operating at.
Yeah, it's crazy. Mike Sterling, your thoughts on what we can learn from those other attacks?
Well, I can definitely say that we're not the only ones that have learned from it. They've definitely learned from it. They know when the first responders are going to come in. And I think, honestly, they're counting on bringing the first responders in. Bait them in. Put 5 guys into a school with a bunch of hostages. And now all of a sudden you've got all your law enforcement in the area drop down onto that one spot. And your 50 guys in the surrounding buildings, just ambush them and tear them up. We've seen it before. They've done it and they like it. They've just done it at a much smaller level. And that right there, if you can just tie those guys down, now you've opened up the rest of that town for doing whatever you want to do. Go to the hospital, go to the airport, go start tearing stuff up wherever you want. Yes, the problem is, from our standpoint, is there's not a law enforcement agency in this country that's going to cut loose the money and say, oh, there's going to be a terrorist event tomorrow, so we need to make sure that we double our training time and we need to do all this overtime and everything. They're not going to do it. They're never going to do it. How many, I mean, Mike, you've taught so many cops, it's ridiculous. How many law enforcement agencies really want to have their people trained? It's expensive and they don't want to pay for it. And the guys are complacent. There's just like Khalid, you were saying, there's a huge culture of complacency in the first responder community in the United States. It's September 10 again, and we're all just sitting here waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Mike Glover, do you want to address that before John picks up?
Yeah, just address that, like having experience teaching first responders, there's a lot of guys on tactical teams that take this very seriously, but even they don't have the capacity and capability. I mean, a lot of officers, for example, that I teach rarely have NVGs and lasers. You know how to die really fast in a gunfight is at night when somebody that your adversary has night vision and lasers. I mean, again, I think I heard it in the first round. Somebody mentioned we own the night. That's how we win wars. And for an adversary to be able to pick that up in the open market in a department that he's going against, not to have that capability, it's a travesty. Small unit tactics, basic stuff. You don't even have to have a large budget. The ability to, set a support by fire position, assault an objective, flank and maneuver, the basics of moving personnel. Patrol officers aren't taught that in the academy. Most patrol officers, unless they have a former infantry guy in their area or their division, and they do hip pocket training at a gas station in lull and downtime, they're not going to get that training and experience. And what do you think is going to happen when you go against an adversary who knows how to shoot, move, and communicate? When 2 dudes like in North Hollywood are moving and they got SKSs and AKs and they're handing every department that they come across their butts, where these dudes are going to have to go into gun stores and ask for NVGs and lasers. I mean, they're gonna actually need the help, which is another part of the topic. They're going to need the help from civilians. because they're not going to be able to get it done. There's not enough tactical, competent organizations in this country to deal with a massive scale attack.
No.
That's real terrorists getting it done. They're just not.
So, Mike Glover, quick question for you, and then I promise I'll pass it off to John. So we were doing some night vision testing, and Cindy had a can of upside down spray paint, and she was just marking stuff off on this golf course as far as distances were concerned. It was field paint. It's water soluble. It goes away, but somebody thought that she was vandalizing the golf course. So 2 cops showed up, and they had beacons on their vest that they didn't even know about. I'm looking at it through the night vision. I said, "Oh, I see y'all have IR beacons." They're like, "What?" I said, "Well, why don't you come here and have a look at this?" Like, they were lit up like a Christmas tree under IR. Do any of our law enforcement agencies domestically here have any of the stuff? Mike Sterling will say what it is again, but it's basically infrared absorbing stuff. What's it called, Mike? The stuff that there's a standard for it.
Oh, Brady compliant.
Okay. Does anybody have that stuff domestically, Mike?
No, the answer is no. I mean, if you think about what these guys are, just trying to get these guys to pay attention to, specific hostage rescue tactics, right? Like, let me give you an example. Like, at a breach point, if it's a center-fed door, you want to achieve simultaneous points of domination or a simultaneous clear. Why? Because it makes no sense if you send one guy left and the guy right is delayed because the guy on the left will get shot in the back, right? So you want simultaneous clears. I've taught points of domination, CQB, law enforcement agencies, and they've told me, well, that never happens. That we just don't run into that. Well, it's not a problem until it's a problem. So most of the things that we've identified in law enforcement is just, and I get it, this is what you do naturally. You operate to your convenience. And if they're utilized in high-risk warrants where they never get into a gunfight, and that's once in a career field. In some major cities, the patrol officers are actually more gunfights, because nobody wants to go against the SWAT team when they throw in a flashbang, right? So they're going to surrender. The patrol officers are in the gunfights as individuals, as singletons, but it just points to the issue across the country. You just don't have the capability. I think Mike said this with the EOD example. That's just like a no-brainer, right? You don't address an explosive ordnance device with multiple guys standing around observing, just like you wouldn't stand together and take a M67 grenade. Well, imagine how patrol officers arrive on scene. They merge, they sit behind a patrol car. You take out one group of patrol officers on a shift, you wiped out half of the force in some places in this country. And that's scary because who's going to do the fighting? That's why I think it's an important component to the conversation, which I love what you guys are doing, is we're speaking mostly to civilians because they're the ones who are going to have to pick up the pieces.
So NIR compliant was the acronym I was looking for, near infrared. So for our audience, NIR compliant, actually Mike Sterling asked a particular company who shall remain unknown at SHOT Show if their tactical vests for law enforcement were NIR compliant, and they went, "We're not sure." So when we got home from SHOT Show, we tested it, and a $25 Chinese plate carrier was impossible to see in the bamboo and palm trees, and the super expensive one that was meant for law enforcement
looked like a highway reflector.
We sent them the pictures. We were like, well, there's your answer to your question. Anyway, I apologize for the story. John, go ahead.
Yeah. So, and a real quick thing, because myself and Dave, we train law enforcement. We do basic SWAT with a lot of, not even necessarily SWAT cops, but just getting routine everyday officers skilled up on being able to do room clearing and understand threat patterns. And we do advanced for more SWAT team members. But the common thing is, like, these cops are actually going after, they're thinking of a drug bust. They're not thinking of actually going up against an actual organized force. And one thing we haven't even really talked about too is comms. They also got a lot of American high level military comms. And if your opponent has comms too, and they have night vision and you don't, you are losing that fight 99.9% of the time. And the only way you win it is if you're lucky. And that is the reality. but as Mike Sterling said, the budgeting is the problem. These police departments, they have to play the politic game of city police and county police, and well, we don't have $50,000 to buy 3 sets of night vision for our officers or our SWAT team. So that's just not, because it's not a real threat in their mind, but it is. But I just wanted to say that real quick. But Khalid, what can we do if we're talking just as Mike Glover said, to civilians primarily tonight? What can we do to see patterns, logistics, and how these attacks kind of develop? And what are you hearing chatter-wise about what's going on here? The indicators of this.
Well, what we did was in the last update version of the assessment that we put out, we put in literally profiles of who your attackers are and who your support team is. And you're basically looking for and I hate saying it this way, Middle Eastern military-age males that are coming from labor, meaning carpenters, plumbers, electricians, people that can blend in very easily. And when they blend in, they're inside of your buildings, they're inside of your infrastructure. They can see everything where it is, and they can plant things in place that can be used later. So one of the things we've told people is that, look, the first thing you need to look for is when these Middle Eastern males start to disappear from the age of 25 to 45. When you see people start to disappear, where you don't see them going to the mosque anymore. If there's a mosque in your city, if you don't see them in the shopping malls anymore, if you can't reach them by phone, if they're not coming to work, that's your first red alert that something is about to happen. Number two, you are also looking at how these people move. Remember, in the beginning, I said you are talking about 2 types of people. You are talking about the support network, and you are talking about the handlers. The handler you will never see outside. He is working from an encrypted phone that is only 2 or 3 people have the number. He is working very carefully on how he operates. The guy moving around in society is the guy that you need to target, because he's the one who's going to lead you to the next guy up. What we're not doing, and I come back to what you guys were saying, is that as a intelligence service in the US, as a law enforcement service in the US, you're not thinking that this is possible. And when you're not thinking this is possible, you're not looking for the possibility. You're not looking for these people. In our assessment, we laid out 14 cities where you have had massive Middle Eastern, military-aged males move, and literally named out the cities and what countries people have come from. And when you start looking at the countries, you know what type of fighter you're looking at. Somalia, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Libya. And we've laid out where they've moved inside the US. That kind of information is very crucial that law enforcement needs to look at, is that you need to start looking at these things. Number 2, identification. Most of these people on fake passports, January 1st, blah, blah, blah. That's going to be the year is going to be made up, but the date will be January 1st.
Why is that?
Most people don't have birth certificates. And when you're making a fake ID, you're not thinking, oh, let's see, I need to think of an ID, a date that no one's going to think of, like April 15th. You're thinking, 1st of January, 31st December, 25th December. You're thinking dates like this. So when you're looking at people, and this is what we've told hospital administrators, re-vet every single person who has a security identification. Look at every doorway that comes in that's not open to the public. You've got your main doors to the hospital, but you have employee entrances. Those employee entrances, check and see if those are key scans. Are they card scans? Or can anybody walk in the door? So the electrician that you called, the air conditioned guy that you called, can he come in through those entrances without any trouble? If he can, you're at a security risk. When we put out our first assessment the FBI issued 2 products, and they're listed in our assessment. They issued 2 products directly related to healthcare centers, and a terrorist attack, a mass casualty event related to healthcare centers. So we hit a nerve. Either they were thinking this was possible, or they thought something could happen. And then boom, these 2 products were released. And we've highlighted them in our assessment. The second thing, you guys, our battlefield guys that have come back from the war on terror, they need to be really active, because you know what you're looking for. You've seen them on the battlefield. You know what I hate to use the word profiling, but you're the best at it. You've seen it, you know it, you know the guy that looks suspicious, you know the guy that looks fishy, the one that shouldn't be where he is. You know what you're looking for. The normal guy doesn't. I mean, if you put a plainclothes cop out there and you put a guy who's spent time in Afghanistan out there, the plainclothes cop is not going to pick up the terrorist as fast as the guy, the soldier that's come off the battlefield. Yeah. This is where our vets need to be really active. And I hate saying it this way, but your civilian population cannot do it. Your Glock is not going to handle the terrorist that's firing at you. He's got bulletproof armor on. Your Glock's not going to penetrate him. This is where your vets are going to know what to do, what kind of ammo, how to move, how to operate, how to take these guys down. If you're counting on your police force to do this, forget it. It's like Mike was saying, that you're teaching them CQB now, because they don't even think about the possibility of this happening. And even now, I mean, let's look at the example. Let's look at the example of the Idaho shooter. How long did it take you to neutralize the Idaho sniper? And that was with an entire police force. That was with an entire sheriff's department, all moving together. It still took you hours to take him down. And he was inside of a forest moving. And they're saying it was only one, and we still say there was more than one. There's no way one guy was doing all of that with the shotgun. So our position has always been that, look, stop thinking it can't happen again. Because that's what the terrorists are counting on as well, that America has gotten complacent. They don't believe it can happen again. They're not ready for it possibly happening again. And we can go really high level in the attack that we carry out. I also want to highlight the point why tier two cities. Psychological impact across the United States in major cities. You hit a city of 100,000, 200,000 people and carry out a terrorist attack. New York is scared. Los Angeles is scared. Chicago is scared. Detroit is scared. Miami is scared. Dallas, Fort Worth is scared, because if it can happen there, it can happen here. And all of a sudden, the engines move, but you've had the impact that you needed. What we keep saying to people is, you have been tested and shown, tested and shown, tested and shown. And if you go through and look at every single attack that has happened, every single hoax call that's happened, every single explosion that's happened in the US in this calendar year alone, they've already shown you what they're doing. Now, reacting to it, moving your intelligence assets, moving your law enforcement, preparing your vets to do profiling in the field, that's now what the US has to do. Because if you don't move now, the attack is going to happen. It's going to be devastating.
Yep, 100%. And one other question that's kind of popped into my head as we've been talking tonight is, what is the online effects of people that are on platforms like X and Facebook and all of these other platforms that are aiding in the complacency of Americans by pointing them in the wrong direction? Is there any of that kind of stuff that you see where these terrorist organizations are actually using people in the tech world to point people in the wrong direction?
Well, let me take that in 2 steps. If you look at X and Facebook, the level of Al-Qaida and Islamic State operatives that are on X and are on Facebook would blow your mind. Yep. They are having spaces live on X. and no one knows that they're talking there. We have operatives online that are inside of Facebook groups. Now, before they were on Telegram, so you could join the Telegram group and there was no question. You could easily, move around to collect data. Now, what are they doing? Now they start asking you questions about the Quran and about jihad. Then they call you up. They ask you where you're located, what your name is. They speak to you in either Arabic or Pashto or Farsi. They figure out whether you really are who you are or not, and then they let you into the group. It's not an immediate entry. At the same time, when you are talking to civilians, people are going, no, it can't happen. You're fear mongering. We have on our X profile, there's a group that we set up called Terror Threat Awareness. The number of comments that we have inside that group, I had to stop open membership where people could just come and join, because people were coming in saying, you're just fear mongering, you're just fear mongering, you're just fear mongering. And I'm going, are you kidding? You think I'm doing this for fun? It's 5:45 in the morning in Pakistan right now. And I'm, talking about a terror threat to the US because this is something I know is going to happen. The impact of it is massive. And if the American people aren't ready for what's going to happen, the global impact is going to be much bigger, because the war on terror will be nothing compared to what happens after this.
Yeah, that's ominous. And so, question for the panel, and I'll start with you, Mike Glover. This is in response, and what we'd be looking for. And we've already laid out the picture of first responders and the drastic lack of preparedness. But if hospitals are overrun, what is the realistic response time for SWAT, federal agents, National Guard, that kind of thing? Because if this got big enough, I would think that would be the tiered steps. But what are we looking at there?
Well, partially, I mean, when it depends on the number of casualties, but when you look at these elements that arrive, it obviously depends on the geographical density of population. The more people that you have, the more people that you're going to have show up. LA is a great example of that, when they were contending with rioters and how many patrol officers you got out in the field. With that being said, I think it's going to be likely that nobody comes, that nobody shows up potentially. I mean, if you think about how many SWAT elements there are, most SWAT elements in the country, and you know this from training SWAT, are regional teams that it's a part-time duty as part of the responsibility as a patrol officer. So they'll do their job, and then they'll carry their gear, their loadout for a SWAT response or an SRT response in the back of their vehicle. The SWAT teams that I've trained, you might see 3 or 4 different counties and towns consolidate, and that's going to extend the timeline and the reaction time that they have. And in many cases, this is just a case in point from the BLM and Antifa riots in Seattle. You had politicians like the governor, the Seattle mayor, telling law enforcement, don't show up at all. Remember Chaz? That was the protected zone. And it was so funny. It's like they stood for freedom because they were against fascism. But the first thing they started doing is setting up checkpoints and pulling out ARs to maintain security. So as you had people who were getting attacked and assaulted, they were being told to law enforcement, don't show up at all because we have to prioritize mass casualties. I also think about it from a law enforcement perspective. A lot of these guys and gals, they love their families, obviously. If I'm a law enforcement officer and I'm working a local shift, if there's a wildfire, you're going to do work. And your home is going to be taken care of by your spouse or your family, your friends, or the department. But if there's terrorists domestically in your town, you know where I'm going to be? Standing at the threshold of my doorway with an AR, protecting who I love the most. And so that's going to be the complication here. It's like, we're not talking about a situation that's isolated. We're talking about a saturation, a beehive effect that's going to impact psychologically, tactically, all these scenarios. And lastly on this, I think the most significant thing that Khalid and I think Mike talked about it as well is like we have the best ability in what we're hearing and understanding the enemy, and then seeing what that looks like. And I like the analogy Khalid or the example Khalid brought up with the veterans. That's very true. How many people are actually paying attention? You know, the targets, the easiest targets for jihadists are any place in public where an American is, because they're in TikTok, Instagram, on social media, and not heads up displayed, focused on what's in front of them. You know what I'm doing? Especially with I'm with my family, my cell phone's put away in my fanny pack next to my Glock 17, because I'm not taking any chances, and I want a heads up display to maintain situational awareness. I think we have a lot of problems here, and I think that's a a good segue too to talk about civilians, because I think they're going to have to, like an auxiliary force would augment overseas. The civilian population, the veteran population, is going to have to augment law enforcement, and we're going to have to be on the same sheet of music in some way.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Man, that's a whole rabbit hole. We'll go down in just a minute. I know, like that's you had the same thought that I did. I know, but one of the things I wanted to talk about for sure was the vaporized sarin nerve gas that has been, Khalid, you've talked about this and what it can do in a city environment. I know, Mike, you have some expertise here, so I'll actually start with Mike Sterling on the sarin gas and what that would actually look like if vaporized, even in a one of these tier 2 cities that doesn't necessarily have this massive downtown area, but still has a industrial commercial area where a lot of people congregate, or malls and that kind of thing.
So sarin is a nerve gas. I dealt with actually quite a bit of sarin in Iraq while we were over there digging that kind of junk up. That was lovely. I used sarin as my weapon of choice in Exercise Terminal Breeze for Washington D.C. back in '96. God, I'm dating myself. Here's the best part and the worst part about sarin. Sarin has an extremely high volatility. It will evaporate at about the same rate as gasoline, maybe even a little bit higher. So that's great for people that want to be able to get into the area. That's bad if you're the guy who's targeting an area. Now, if you want to use it and you want to use it on an indoor situation, like if you want to use it on the hospital, if you want to use it on, if you want to use it, a theater, anything like that. Great place to use it because it's going to hang around for a while. Using it outdoors, terrible option. It's not the right thing for it. Tool, put it in the toolbox, use the tool for what it's appropriate for. It'll still do a really good job. If you look at the first major use of it in the Shinrikyo Tokyo subway bombing, in a subway is a perfect place to use this. The problem with most mid-tier cities is we don't have subways, and a large quantity of the United States does not have those. So sports stadiums, concert halls, the like, those are wonderful places to use that kind of stuff. And you don't have to do a whole lot with it. Just a very small quantity of explosives for dissemination, or utilizing a pressurized dissemination system, whatever it is that you need to do to be able to get it out there, and it'll work really, really well. There's not a whole lot of very good defense for it. Your first indicator is that you've got people around you that are starting to do the kicking chicken, and hopefully you're not one of them. But you automatically have to assume you're bit, and that's not good. And if you don't have a duodote nerve agent antidote kit,
game over.
Sorry for you, kids, because you got nothing. Once you're bit, and there's not a lot you're going to be able to do about it.
Which is what makes it such a devastating weapon in the hands of a terrorist, is because it's pretty much like who we get, and that's it. So, and real quick to circle back, I wanted to circle back with both mics. So we'll stay with you, Sterling, on the X thing that was brought up. One of the reasons I'm asking is because I'm on X a fair amount throughout the day, typically looking at what news is going on and kind of prepping for survival dispatch episodes, that kind of thing. But it seems like the chatter from what I would classify as misinformation spreaders seems to be ramping up, and it seems like they're pointing in directions that aren't actual threats, trying to divert our attention away from things that could actually be threats. And that's just what I'm seeing, and that's, I know anecdotal information, but I wanted to kind of get you guys to weigh in on what aspect, because back in 2001 we didn't have this vast social media presence and the ability to have communications across the globe very, very quickly via social media. So Sterling, I'll start with you, and then we'll circle back to Mike Glover on that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing huge quantities of pushback on anything that I happen to put onto there. Exactly what Khalid was saying. Oh, you're fear mongering. Yeah, I'm not even really saying much of anything, and yeah, I hear a lot of that these days, a whole lot. I've seen a massive ramp up in anti-Semitic information. I've seen a massive ramp up in pro-Palestinian, pro-jihadist stuff. Heck, even pro-Nazi stuff. And whoever thought that was going to be a thing?
That's insane. Yeah,
that is ridiculous. Even pro-communist and pro-socialist stuff on there. And I look at it and go, what world are you in? Do we all want to starve equally? Is that what's going to happen here? So yeah, I'm exactly with you on that one. I've seen tons of that stuff recently, and it's been a huge ramp up as of just the last 2-3 weeks.
Yeah. So Mike Glover, coming back to you on basically that same question, and I think Mike just laid the groundwork for a lot of the stuff that I am talking about for sure. That we're seeing all of these crazy posts about ideologies and anti-Semitism and pro-Nazi propaganda, pro-communism propaganda, and it all seems like a bunch of noise. And I don't know who is necessarily positing all of these things, but it does seem like that they're just trying to add so much noise to the online space. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's just that it's noise, and what I would advise, I mean, as assessors and analyzers and targeters, it's important to get a snapshot of the entire picture, right? To understand the strategy. 70% of everything that's put out has an objective. It's on purpose, right? So there's a lead back to a farm, a foreign actor, a foreign adversary. And that's why I would advise, just like I do for the most part, is just tune into subject matter experts like Khalid, like Mike, like Survival Dispatch, like Sarah and Sean, all these people that I work with. It's like that. These are the SMEs. We're not having this conversation at a round table, working at Home Depot. We all invested decades of our lives immersed and integrated into a world where this was our job. And that's the problem. Like, we all see it with clear vision because that was the world we operated in. And it's a travesty to us, which is why we're passionate and we care about it, because we could see all the writing on the wall. And so I would advise people to stay away from unnecessary noise and focus distilling your efforts and attention on people who have a voice based on their experiences and expertise. And again, like, not stating like I don't like people who are like end all be all solutions to anything, which that's why you should diversify to weigh the information. But I think it's important just to tune the noise out. And to be honest, like, go into segments of content like the telegrams and the podcasts that are very specific, and stay off the social media platforms, because a lot of people are fear mongering as a deliberate tactic to get you to shelter in place, to get you to bed down and to be introverted, not talk to anybody, be paranoid, and not be proactive. Like, these people who are telling Khalid, like, you're fear mongering, That's exactly what people say when they themselves are campaigning against you because they want you to do the opposite, or they're insecure and not confident in their capabilities. And so we want to replace that with education, information, and get them to be prepared.
Yeah, that's a great great way to put it for sure. And yeah, I definitely agree with everything that you just said, because if we get looking at the noise too much, then we're just going to drown out what's really going on, and we're not going to see the patterns, because intelligence is pattern recognition, and we have to look at those patterns. And what it feels like is they're trying to throw 5 million patterns at us all at the same time, and that is a camouflage for what's really going on. Chris, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, so we're running a little bit long. I've got 2 questions for you, Khalid, and then we're going to get into what Americans can actually do to prepare. And we'll lean heavily on Mike and Mike, as well as yourself, Khalid. So I'll give you both questions. Why is the time frame before Ramadan, which is February 17th and 18th, 2026, why is that important? And are there indicators that we can watch for meaning all Americans, that would be like a prelude to something happening, to one of these attacks happening?
Well, we have said the problem for us is that when we're looking at a terrorist attack, the more information that you put out, the faster that date changes. So the more informed we are making the people, like you've got Sarah talking, you've got Sean talking, you've got Legend talking, you've got us talking. There's 3 or 4 other people out there that are talking. The more information that we're putting out, the more it pushes the terrorists backwards, that we can't attack, because the amount of information going out is putting too much of our plans out there. This date was originally, we were looking at the Ramadan that has already passed, that was when this was going to happen. But everyone became so active. The 4, 5, 6 people that were talking and talking and talking and talking became so active in putting information out that the date changed. The date changed. They kept pushing backwards. They kept testing. They kept testing. They kept testing. Where can we infiltrate? Where can we move? Where can we do? You had the bombing at the parking lot at Fort Lauderdale Airport. That was a test. And everything became, okay, how do we deal with this? We know people within our group have gotten threats. I myself am on the Al-Qaida, the Taliban, and the Islamic State hit list, so I can't even go back to my own home. I move around on a regular basis because of this. Since I've started talking about this, the number of threats that I'm receiving is just unbelievable. And it's all the same thing. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. Either shut up or we will shut you up. Because we're laying out their entire playbook, and their playbook is being made public, and we're playing that out. This is what you're looking for. This is the profile. This is where you're looking. This is the type of attack that's going to happen. And everyone involved in this is getting targeted in some way. And we all look at it from the point of view of, if it saves lives, then it's fine if we get threats. We can handle threats. We've dealt with them before. We'll deal with them again. But if people are going to start saying to us that, we're not going to listen, and tomorrow it happens, then we kind of go, where are we screaming from? I mean, look at how much Sarah's been on TV talking about this. Sean Ryan, UON News, AON News. She's been everywhere talking about this. It hasn't made a dent. We've been talking about it everywhere. We put out assessments, we put out reports, we put out everything. It hasn't made a dent. Of all of the people that we have contacted or reached out to, I've been contacted by maybe 15, 20 people that are law enforcement, fire department, or hospital administrator. That's how serious you're taking this threat. And we all turn around and go, we're screaming and you're not listening. We're yelling into an echo chamber. And you think we're trying to scare you? We're not trying to scare you. We're trying to get you ready for what's coming. And what's coming is something that you have never even, I haven't seen a movie that would even prepare you mentally for what's coming. because you're thinking 9/11 was a fluke. It was a blip on the radar. It happened. We spent 20 years in Afghanistan and Iraq. That was the end of the story. That was the first chapter. Now you have Iran, the Islamic State, Afghanistan, the Taliban, Haqqani Network, Al-Qaida, IRGC, Russia. Everyone wants payback. And they're all coordinating together. Now, how do I tell an American citizen to get ready? First off, put your phone down. When you're out in public, stop looking at that screen. Start looking around you. Because if you don't have situational awareness, it's game over. The first bullet is yours. It basically already has your name written on it. As long as the phone becomes more important to us than our families are, this game is over. There's no tip I can give you that'll make you ready. And the problem is that phone, it's right here. I'm either making a video, taking a picture, or on social media. And I'm not looking around me at who could be a threat, who's following me, who's watching me. Pick up a couple of books on counterintelligence. This is for every citizen out there. Pick up some books on counterintelligence. Learn how to figure out when someone's tailing you. Learn to figure out when someone is watching in a way they shouldn't be watching. Because yes, our vets are there, but our vets can't do it all by themselves. There are 350 million people in the United States. How many of them are veterans? And how many of them are living in tier 1 cities, tier 2 cities? You can't expect everyone else to do your job for you. At some point, you've got to take the responsibility. We have put in our assessment a list of recommendations for hospitals, for law enforcement, for people themselves, what they should do. Please, for God's sake, learn how to use a weapon if you don't know how to use one. Even if it's a gun, even if it's a handgun in your home to protect your family, learn how to use a weapon. Because when it happens, you don't have time to think. They're counting on fear. Once that fear grips you, it's game over. And if you can mentally get beyond that fear level and be able to fight back in some way, you might be able to save yourself and your neighbors. That might make some impact. But if you're going to wait for the police car to come, or the SWAT team to come, or the vet from across the street to come and save you, you're not going to have much of a stay.
Thanks, Khalid. For everybody out there, look up Tony Blauer, Weaponize the Flinch, as far as quickly pivoting from not being engaged to full speed ahead to defend yourself in the face of sudden violence. But I want to get into the meat of this now at the end. And I'm coming to you first, Mike Glover. And this is stuff that's clearly in your wheelhouse. So the question everybody, every American at least, is asking, what can we actually do to prepare and survive? And what's the minimum that every American family should have on hand as far as preps are concerned?
Yeah, just basics on situational awareness. I think Khalid covered. I think it's important. I do have a book called Prepared, a manual for surviving worst case scenarios. It's better in audible form. I'm not a big reader nowadays, but it gives basics like what is situational awareness? It's a deliberate tactic. It's something that you do consciously, because most of the time you're running autonomically on autopilot and you're not paying attention. And so that's when you're driving, that's when you're in public places, that's when you're especially around strangers. And one of the things that I think families need to do, there's two parts to it. One that Khalid brought up again, which is a great point, is learn how to use a weapon. My first team sergeant told me a pistol is used to get to your rifle, right? When you look at self-defense, most of us default to an inside the waistband pistol. When I was in GRS with Sean Ryan, when we were in Yemen, we had a Glock 17 in our waistband. That was the immediate threat. We had multiple machine guns in the trunk of the car. We had M4s by our legs. We had the ability to upgrade capability to deal with the various threats that we would potentially encounter. Was it the dude just trying to run us off the road? Was it 2 low-level guys that were trying to mug us? We could escalate if necessary. Most civilians don't think about escalation of force because they're not in that wheelhouse. They think 2 a.m. gas station self-defense scenario. And that's what we train for. But what we're saying here is you're going up against a real foe. This isn't some scumbag who lives in the ghetto who's trying to rob you for your necklace. We're talking about people who have an ideology that I respect, actually, because they follow through with their ideology. They're willing to face you head on and clack themselves off. And that's a different type of enemy that you need to be prepared for. So don't just have the 900 to 1,300 feet per second, 115 grain 9 mil in your waistband. Have the 2,500 plus feet per second M4 with 30 rounds in the magazine. Have the ability, which I think is the most important part, train as an individual, train as a family, but also train as a community. You're going to need a tribe. A 2 is 1, right? We need the ability to link up with our neighbors, consolidate. And what I tell people is something's going on. I just saw an Apache fly over, and I have like 10 cars that passed me, the police cars. When I
damn black helicopters.
Yeah. Oh, it is getting busy. When I think about force multiplication, and I think about pulling security, for example, you can't do it alone. You can't protect your family alone in the threshold forever. You need a tribe. You need a community. Lean in on that. I started last plug, I promise. I started AmericanContingency.com, was vilified by the FBI, being called a malicious, violent extremist, because I wanted people post BLM and Antifa protest to be able to have a forum to connect and take care of each other. When this all hits the fan, when this happens, because it's going to happen, you're going to need to lean on neighbors and people in your own community. It's nice to have a friend in Montana. My best friend's Andy Stump, and he lives in Montana. That's cool to have a SEAL Team 6 operator. That's your best friend. But guess what? He's locking down his hometown, taking care of his fam, and I'm doing the same. You need your next door neighbor that you scowl at every time you see him check in his mailbox, that you hide from every time he drives by your house. It might be the opportune time to meet your neighbor, shake hands, and start building this thing out. And AmericanContingency.com is a good way to start that, to find people in your own backyard.
Yep. Appreciate it, Mike Sterling.
Yeah, I'd like to also throw in on top of what Khalid was saying with learn a little bit of counterintelligence. The guys from Forward Observer actually teach a class on that, and they've got their little mobile classes. It's a real good class to take. I highly recommend it. Mike and the guys really know what they're talking about. But yeah, it's all got to start. And I've been talking to several people up here in the chats. It's got to start at the low level. And if you're in one of these departments that just has its head buried in the sand, or you've got a neighborhood that's got their heads buried in the sand, whichever, you can't start at the top and work your way down with these, unfortunately, because these are top-down problems. So the only way to be able to fight one of these kind of top-down problems is from the bottom up. You've got to get the rank and file on your side first and work your way up the pyramid. That's the only way to do it with these sort of train wrecks. And now, thankfully, us as vets, for example, I was setting up a neighborhood watch. So I went down to the sheriff's department to talk to the neighborhood watch guy. And this is just a quick example, because I wanted to say, hey, I want to share intelligence data with you guys. So I sat down and I'd done an area study and everything like that. And I put everything together and I go down to the sheriff's department. I'm sitting there talking to them and they're just sitting there with their mouths hanging open. And they said, stop. Made a phone call. 2 more guys come in. And then the sheriff comes in and they sit down and they go, okay, start back up again. And I'm telling them this stuff. And finally, I was like, you guys don't have an intelligence apparatus, do you? They said, no. They said, but we do now. So, yeah, I got roped up into the local sheriff's department. I'm now their intelligence guy.
Be careful the questions you ask.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. But you know, even if you can't be, you know, if you're a vet or you're from an intelligence background, or even if you're just well educated in this kind of stuff, if you can go down to your local law enforcement agency and volunteer your time doing that sort of thing, it puts another cop out on the street, things like that. Or it gives these guys a little bit our Lori, I'm not coming there. If you know, if you can make it a little bit easier for one of these officers to be able to go home, or that agency to go, oh, wait a minute, hey, this intelligence is actually showing us something, then you know what, you're contributing. But yeah, you got to start at your home, and you got to secure your own home. Do you need to be walking around with a backpack that's got a full chemical weapons kit in it all the time and scrounge up a nerve agent antidote set and all that? No, it's too much, guys. All right. Now, carrying a pistol on you and a long gun inside your vehicle. Yeah, absolutely. Mike's on money on that, man. I started doing that a couple of years ago. I'm done. I'm done playing that game. We've gone back to Asia rules here in the US again. So, okay, I'm down with that. I understand those rules. But yes, you do need to have those things. But there's also a line, okay? Walking around with that helmet on all the time, that's not gonna help. All right. Just bring intelligent conversation into it. Don't bring emotion into it.
Yeah, good advice, Mike. John, I'm gonna pivot back to you.
Yeah. So, one of the things I'll also add before I go to Khalid with this next series of questions, train your family too. That's another big one. I just recently, I have a 12-year-old son, and many of you guys that have watched the podcast know that I started taking him to courses because he's actually very good with a gun. He recently went to a long-range course and shot 1,000 yards with my sniper rifle. And he is training up and start them. And you as the parent need to make this decision with each child. I have a middle son that's autistic. I couldn't take him to a long-range class. You know, I couldn't take him to any of that stuff. By my 12-year-old, I know that he can do that stuff because I've been taking him to the range for 5-6 years now, and he's safer than some of the cops I train, in all honesty. But train your family, train your wife. I mean, a lot of us know that our wives are going to be the most reluctant students that we're going to have. So maybe find a buddy who can train your wife, but teach your family how to be a part of the team, because that may be all you have around you when these things clack off. And you need to know, I take my son to restaurants when we're one-on-one, and I say, okay, a shooter walks into this door, what's your first response? What are you going to do? I'm having that conversation with a 12-year-old because I know he can comprehend that. Now, I wouldn't have that with every child of mine because I have a 4-year-old daughter too, but these are all important things for us to think about, and important steps for us to take, because at the end of the day, when you're locked in your house, your family's your only backup. And that's an important thing. They've got to know how to handle these weapons, and how to, do basic things like cover your back, So, but moving into the next question, what are some essential things that every American should really have on them for these kinds of things? So, like go bag essentials and emergency family plans, recognizing suspicion for pre-attack behaviors, sarin gas first aid and decontamination basics, and what do you do if buildings are seized? I mean, we've seen that in Colorado within the last few years with violent Venezuelan gangs taking over entire apartment complexes. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities. And how do we avoid bottlenecks if trauma centers are under attack? So we can start there with just like go bag essentials, and you can run down the list of things that we think that Americans need, just your average everyday American.
Well, for us, the first thing you need to do is take some first aid courses, understand how to handle wounds, whether they be gunshots, knives. Every family should have first aid training, because without it, you're going to be stuck. Even if it's for the neighbor next door, you need to have that. So you're talking tactical awareness, you are talking wilderness awareness, that level of first aid, so that you can handle whatever happens in your home. Those kits have to be at home. Secondly, make sure you've got masks. Make sure you have contamination kits. If they're in your cars, that's fine. It's not something you need to carry around with you, but make sure they're in your vehicles. The problem that most people are going to have is that they don't know where to start. Even if we start laying out things in a go bag, they're going to start going, okay, what's a go bag? And most of your audience is going to understand the go bag concept, but 98% of the American public will go, what's a go bag? And I'll send you guys a list of things that you need to keep in a go bag that you can put up on your website. But the problem is that there's so much education that needs to be given to the American citizen right now that we don't know where to start from. And for months we've been talking about this. You guys are the first people that have asked us that what kind of preparedness, what do I need my go bag? I mean, for 4 months we've been talking about this nonstop. For 4 months I've been talking about this, and you're the first people that have asked, what do we need in our go bags? So for me, the level of education that needs to come up very quickly in the U.S. population it's massive, because everyone has gotten so comfortable with, we have a police force, we have ambulances. But hey, let's look at it this way. The police force is gone, the ambulances are gone, the hospital is gone. Now what do you do? Mentally, you're not there. And situational awareness, understanding your environment, getting the basic trainings that you need, first aid treatments, wilderness treatments, knife protection, being able to understand the environment around you, those things all need to be there. But no one's willing to listen. So even if we lay out a go bag kit for you, that you need this type of mask, you need these types of kits, you need these contaminations, you need these types of bandages, people are going to go, what's all this stuff? So what I'll do is I'll put together a list and I'll send it across to Chris. And this is your go bag kit. And this is all the stuff you need to put in. And you guys are also experts in the field. So you can add in stuff that we forget. And we'll give everybody an idea of what they need in terms of a go bag. But first and foremost, weapons, family. Like Mike said, build your tribe. Because without your tribe, you're not protected. I mean, you can protect your home, but what about the guy next door and the guy on the other side of you, the guy behind you? If you're in an apartment building, what if a cartel is participating? Because that's another scenario we put into this, that alongside the terrorists, what if the cartels jump in and they start attacking as well? Then what do? You are now fighting people that have very heavy weaponry, and you're standing there with a pistol or a shotgun that you use for deer hunting.
Yeah. Yep. I completely. Yeah, go ahead.
You've got to get to a different level. I mean, that's what we've all been screaming for the past year and a half now, that you need to get to a different level. This is no longer, this is not Call of Duty on the PlayStation. This is real life. Yeah.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that, and I think that you said earlier, Khalid, at least get good with a pistol. I honestly think that bare minimum you should be able to operate a pistol. Yeah. I think that everybody should learn how to use a carbine style rifle, whether it be an AK or an AR platform. Take your pick. Everybody needs to know, because when you're talking about a gunfight, those are the most effective weapons in a gunfight. Look at a pistol versus a rifle ballistically, and there are thousands of videos that you can watch. You're going to lose the fight if you're fighting rifles with a pistol. It's just a fact of life. And most police officers, let's just talk about this. Like most police officers, they're not carrying rifles when they're on patrol. Their patrol rifle is in their car. They have to go retrieve it. That at bare minimum should be our level. Like we should be looking at what the police do and say, okay, that's what I need to do. Now you may have to get creative with how you stage it in your vehicle, but there's a lot of things that people need to think through, because your handgun should be the way that you fight to your plus up in your vehicle.
Yeah,
Whether that
exactly.
be armor and a ballistic helmet I mean, if you want to go full tilt, go full tilt. But we also, JJ Morris in the chat said, learn how to use the gear. You can buy all this medical equipment, you can buy all of this stuff. It's not going to help you if you don't know how to use it.
What's the point of it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
that's why I come back to that point. That the level of education, level of knowledge that needs to be given to the American people is so huge that we're starting from point zero and working up from there. And we don't know when this attack is happening.
Correct. Yep. All right. And I mean, I completely agree with that. Mike Glover, you have tons of experience with this. You've ran companies that are devoted to this, and I've trained with those companies and done all kinds of stuff. I know that you've written books about it, but I know you have a vast level of knowledge in this world. So everything that we've already said, tear apart the things that need to be torn apart, but add to the things that need to be added to, and give us some information on that.
Yeah, everything you guys said is really good. I think extending off of Khalid's point of the cartel taking advantage of the circumstance, you will typically see in any small scale skirmish, riot, criminal activity, exploitation by bad actors. I mean, that's what naturally happens. That's going to be the second and third order effect, right? You see a situation where a tornado rips through a town, and then you'll have people picking through people's property. And there's exploiters everywhere we are. You might not be in the epicenter of that first ring, that concentric circle. You might be on the outskirts of it. I mean, if there was an attack in Park City, in Salt Lake City, I'm on the outskirts. Well, there's going to be shenanigans on the second and third rung based on people taking advantage of other people. One of the things I think about instantly when I think about people's normal pattern of life is they're out and about. I mean, you drive, you commute, you go to work, you park your vehicle in a parking lot, you go to your cubicle, you go to your business, and you do work. Where's your wife? She's at her work. Where's your kid? He or she's at school. The first thing I would do is focus on a plan to consolidate, and every good plan requires good communications. And I would do a combo plan based on an acronym that we use called PACE. I mean, it's just a basic contingency plan: primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. Your cell phone, maybe even via the federal authorities who are trying to get a hold of signal intelligence or stop the communication of bad actors, they might shut down the cell phone infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's open source now, but I've done that on operations. It's called denial of service. We've flown jets to cut down every single cell phone so we can operate and go into these areas so they don't have commo. So if you lean on your cell phone that's GSM or CDMA, and it's tied to a tower, it's tied to the power, the hydroelectric dam that's providing electricity, don't bank on that. If you have Starlink, the Starlink Mini is a great way to provide contingency comms for yourself, because you could populate it on the fly, on the go, while you're mobile. And then you could use your cell phone devices that are smartphones to utilize the internet to send data, to send text messages, typically iMessage or whatever Android's pushing nowadays. So you still have the ability to have communications. But if you don't have a consolidation plan with your family, that's maybe even in the emergency, the E in the PACE plan is a time and place. Like, hey, we're dislocated. If I don't contact you via comms, we need to rendezvous at this location. It doesn't have to be a bug out. It could be a bug in. But that's super important, because I think most people don't think about, hey, what happens if we're spread to the four winds? And you will be, because it's going to happen in the middle of the day. It's going to happen when everybody's out and about. And the first thing, this is lastly, but the first thing that happens in any catastrophe, man-made or natural, is the highways and byways get shut down because they become gridlocked. It's either the first responders locking things down, which will happen, especially in a terrorist attack. I mean, imagine what happened with Khalid mentioned Idaho. The sheriff said to the public, the public in the community, shoot to kill. Take care of yourself. If you see this dude, just take him out yourself. And people were in the middle of hikes and camping and recreational activities, and they're like, what? Like, I just got this message that says, hey, this is a dangerous circumstance. We have to take care of ourselves. And 99% of the people who got that message weren't capable of taking care of their families or themselves. So the last thing is mobility. Have a mobility plan. I talk about this often because I'm a big overland off-road nerd, long-range reconnaissance ops in Pakistan, Afghanistan, all over the world. And a lot of people commute with just what's convenient. If you think about it, you're in a situation where this happened in Atlanta, Georgia, 2 inches of ice, like record-breaking ice on the ground. If you grew up anywhere on the East Coast and you got ice, it shuts down everything. Power lines fall, the infrastructure collapses, electricity is out. Well, imagine you're in that situation in Atlanta where the entire city shut down. People abandoned their vehicles for days. People stayed in their vehicles for days. It happened in a winter storm in Buffalo, New York, where people died in neighborhoods because they stayed in their vehicle with the engine running to get warm, and then the snow covered the exhaust. So have a mobility plan that has effective mobility options, like a vehicle with clearance, a vehicle with four-wheel drive. Think about gas. Don't let your vehicle get below half a tank. Consider these things. It's a longer, broader conversation, like Khalid said with the go bag, but these are things that you should focus your energy in.
Yeah, your vehicle is really, it's your mobile home base. You can do a lot of things with your vehicle that you can't do with other things, and you can carry a lot of it. I mean, I have a Toyota Tundra truck with a Diamondback cover on it that's locked down, so I can put a lot of gear in there, and that's what I do. In fact, shameless plug, we're getting ready to do a video on how to set up my truck for a terrorist response attack. So yeah, so look for that on our YouTube channel soon. But Mike Sterling, I want to go to you and see what your input is on this. What does that say? I can't read it.
Oh, sorry. Charles Darwin approves.
Survival of the fittest. I get it now.
Look,
I thought it said Charlie Daniels, and I was like, "What? What is Charlie Daniels?"
Sorry, I'm all inverted here and stuff. I can't add a whole heck of a lot more onto what you guys have done, other than to definitely say that you can have all the gear in the world, and it's not going to do you any good. Okay, possession does not equate proficiency.
Nope.
First, you need to train, and then you need to train with a large quantity of stress involved. If you've got all the training in the world, yet you fold like a wet taco shell the first bullet that goes by, what good are you?
Yep.
Okay. If there's no stress inoculation involved in your training, you're no good to anybody around you. Just assume that your family's going to die if you fold. All right. I hate to put that much stress on people, but there you go. So the more you know, the less you need. That's been the mantra in our world for a very long time. The more you know, the less you need, the faster you are. You've got to have good training. You've got to have something really good between your ears. Now, equipment just gives you options. All right. Mm-hmm. All right. Now, I don't want to get into a fight with 50 jihadists with nothing but my EDC pistol. I don't want to do that ever. Matter of fact, I don't want to stay for that fight, even no matter how well I armed. Guess what? Mike Sterling is popping the ninja smoke bomb poof, and Mike's exfilling out of there with his family. All right. I'm not hanging around for that firefight if I don't have to. It's if I'm there with my family, I don't need to do that. Besides, I'm 55. I don't need to be in a firefight if I can avoid it anyway. All right. So the big thing that you've gotta get into your head. You can have these lists of equipment. You can have all this equipment. You can have a perfect, beautiful, jacked up truck, all that kind of stuff. No skills doesn't get
you. Oh. Looks like he froze up again.
You anywhere. I'm lying. Also, John, I'm a little bit mad at you. Now I know why you won't take me to the range anymore, because you think I'm autistic. I knew it. That's what it all came down to.
Nice.
I'm not mad at you. I'm disappointed.
Oh, that's good. And yes, I might actually. No. um, but and one thing actually we haven't even talked about, and I think it's probably, I mean, it's close to top of the list. It may be the top of the list. Physical fitness is paramount, especially when we're talking about the kind of things that we're talking about. You may have to ditch your vehicle if there's gridlock and carry a pack and a weapon for miles. Some people live 20 miles away from their home at their work. Yeah, you may have to walk a ways. If you're not physically fit, you're going to die in those kind of situations. And a lot of people, when they're injured, their physical fitness plays a big part in them surviving a wound, an attack, all of those kinds of things. Physical fitness is paramount, and it's something that's not stressed enough. I tell you what, I went to a theme park a couple of weeks ago over in Indiana with my family. America's fat AF. I mean, we're fat, comfortable, and kind of pathetic in a lot of ways. And, you know, we have a shirt that I wear often on stream that says comfort is your enemy. Comfort is your enemy. That's a true statement. If you guys are too comfortable, and we are too comfortable in this country, you are opening up the door for bad things to happen. You're opening up the door to be sideswiped by something horrible, and you're not going to know what to do. So physical, get training, all of that stuff. Everything that's been said tonight is from guys that have done this for years, and they're aware of what happens when you aren't prepared. Chris, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, we're running long here. So we've got 3 questions left, and I'm going to give one to Khalid, one to Mike Glover, one to Mike Sterling. So first one's for you, Khalid. I want to talk about national failure points to wrap us up here. In your opinion, why and how has Washington failed to address this threat?
Well, 2 things. Number one, you're not taking it. Washington's not taking it seriously. You have still not approved Joe Kent. He's still waiting. I mean, when you don't have a national counterterrorism director, where do you want us to talk? And if you want me to talk about the counterterrorism advisor sitting in the White House, Seb Gorka, I'm sorry. No. He is not someone who knows anything about terrorism. He's written books, he's taught courses, but you've never been on the battlefield, you've never seen you've never commanded, you've never understood what a terror attack looks like. And if you've never seen it, how do you advise? How do you help me understand how I need to be prepared? You have got people advising the president other than Tulsi. Tulsi is someone who I believe has an immense knowledge. But for some reason, there is a roadblock for her to get to Donald Trump and tell him what is going on. And the problem with that is you've got so many distractions, so many things guiding you off of the rails, that the national failure is you have a counterterrorism advisor who doesn't understand terrorism. And the guy that you need to approve and appoint is still waiting. Even though Joe Kent sitting on that chair right now, I feel 100 times more comfortable. Because there's somebody who would listen. There's someone who understands the battlefield dynamics that we're talking about right now. Who do we tell? We went to the CIA didn't listen. We went to the FBI didn't listen. Who do I tell? There is no counterterrorism advisor that we can tell. I'm not going to talk to Gorka. That's not going to happen, because my level of understanding is battlefield. His level of understanding is academic. Now, how does a university professor understand battlefield warfare who's never been on the battlefield? And that's where my problem comes in, is that when you're looking at national failure, your first national failure is not getting Joe Kent into the chair he belongs in. You got Tulsi there. Now get Joe there. Because those 2 pieces working together will make America much safer. Thirdly, get rid of Seb Gorka. because whatever advice he's giving Trump, he's misdirecting him. I don't understand where the logic comes from of taking your eye off of Afghanistan. And I know who said it. I will not repeat who said it, but I know exactly who in the administration is arguing this point. Taking your eye off Afghanistan is taking your eye off of every terrorist group in the world. And whatever happens in Afghanistan will carry over into Syria, Iraq, Israel, Yemen, Saudi, Kuwait, everywhere. It will spread everywhere. How do you take your eyes off the ball like that? And whoever's advising you to take your eyes off Afghanistan is setting you up for a massive, massive failure. Because at the end of the day, whatever happens, it's Donald Trump that will take responsibility. He is the president of the United States. And it's not so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so that I can put on the table and say, well, it was their mistake. They advised me wrong. At the end of the day, the president is who answers for it. And I like Trump myself. I'm someone who believes that Trump's vision is right for America. But you have surrounded yourself with people that don't understand what America is facing. And because of that, America and Americans have become unprepared. And that is going to be a serious downfall whenever this happens.
That's a scary picture that you paint there. So before I go to Mike Glover, anybody who thinks I'm joking when I say I'm like the Forrest Gump of the business world, Mike Sterling, I don't know if you know this, but this one time I was at Mar-a-Lago, and there's a picture of me with Seb Gorka at Mar-a-Lago. I haven't reminded you in the longest time that I've been to Mar-a-Lago, but the good news is I'm taking you with me the next time, okay? It's the first time I've ever seen Mike Sterling speechless.
He's muted.
Shh, don't tell him that. Anyway, Mike Glover, next question's for you. And, you know, with your background as a Green Beret plus CIA GRS, what are the major blind spots? Is it lack of intel sharing, emergency response planning, funding, the stuff that Khalid just mentioned, something else, or is it just all of the above?
It's all of the above, and I agree with Khalid on the Joe Kent thing. As somebody who understands counterterrorism very well and has studied it as a student, living in the last couple of decades, I am disappointed in the administration's position and its priorities in counterterrorism. And a lot of these things that you see on the news, they're important to American people, right? The immigration issues, the issues with the Russian hoax. All these are important issues, but it's like being in a patrol base where your priorities of work are everything after security. Yeah. Like the number one priority is security. And if you don't have that, then you can't sleep, eat, poop, do anything else. And so what I'm afraid we have done as a nation, because there is so many things as a priority, is we're chasing 100 balls and we don't know how to lock down a direct focus. And the clear understanding of that is the fact that there's not a CTC director, and Joe Kent hasn't been Senate confirmed. I mean, that, in my opinion, is one of the most important actionable positions in the U.S. government. I mean, I used to drive around in GRS, the DNI, and I used to interact with the head of CTC. And the director of SAD. All of these elements need to be focused. And when I see Tulsi Gabbard, who I love, she's a good friend, she's an amazing human being, put so much emphasis in the Russian hoax, I know where her priorities are. It's winning these domestic campaigns, and it's not focused on the biggest threat. And like Khalid stated, the biggest example of that is Afghanistan. I mean, I went to one of the girls that was killed in this pullout, this Abbey Gate. I went to one of the girls' memorials and then her funeral, and it was a very left-leaning place. I mean, it was up in New England, and everybody there was infuriated with what happened. And I don't think it's a left or right issue. It's a American concern. Yeah. And having spent time in Afghanistan and seeing the complexities of it, being that 9/11 was planned and nearly C2'd, command and coordinated from Afghanistan. It's like this is a key piece of terrain that we completely have given up. And sure, you have assets. Sure, you have people and networks. That's not like boots on the ground doing by proxy operations and making sure you're quelling any drama that's going to stir up. The heads of the snake are going to be in Afghanistan if they aren't already. And Khalid probably has an opinion on that. I just think I'm seeing a very diversified approach to all the issues that we're facing, and there's not a profound focus on counterterrorism. And that's going to be what bites us in the ass in the end.
More good news. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate the insight. Mike Glover, last questions for you. In your opinion, what's the one thing that our leaders could do right now to reduce this threat, but they aren't doing?
Oh, did you mean Sterling or did you mean me?
Sorry, I got my mics backwards.
Yeah.
Mike Sterling. Apologies.
There's too many mics in this room, you know. Let's see. What's the one thing our leaders could do right now to reduce the threat but aren't doing? Well, I think Khalid pointed that out very clearly, is that you need somebody at the top that actually understands terrorism. And one of the problems is you get so many of these former GWAT officers that they're like, oh, I've got, all kinds of counterterrorism expertise. How many of them were just, locked up on a cop or a fob for so much time? And Mike, you remember these clowns that we had to deal with during the surge. So many of them were stuck in the Fulda Gap box. They didn't understand what was going on. Mike's crew and my crew, we were doing advisory capacity. God, the guys from the 82nd Airborne, oh geez, I had hair at one time, and those guys just, man, I'm telling you, they were like, no, we're going to get into a fixed battle with them. Do you understand counterinsurgency? Do you understand what we're doing here? This is not what you were thinking about, guys. This is counterinsurgency. 50% military, 50% law enforcement work. And that's the bottom line of the whole damn thing. Now, at least, Mike's crew got to go out and, at least poke heads. But the problem is, yes, you've got to have people that actually understand the threat. Actually understand the threat, not able to write up a PowerPoint presentation about how they understand the threat. Actually understand it for what it is. Know the beast. Somebody that's looked at it and understands the evil that it truly, truly is, and are willing, unfortunately, to match it. And that's the tough part for a lot of people is, oh, we want to be the good guys. Well, guess what? You want to be the good guy, or do you want your country to survive? Because I hate to tell you this, but you're going to have to get dirty to do it. And to do it, I mean, I'm a huge proponent of enhanced radiation weapons, but nobody wants me with my finger on a key up in the Dakotas. So that's not going to happen. But yeah, start with having people that understand the problem, and then let's work our way from there, because I think that right now that's about the best that we can hope for. But are we going to fix this? No, I think it's too late, personally.
Yeah, more good news. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate the input there. Want to just really quickly share a couple things here. So this is AmericanContingency.com that Mike Glover mentioned earlier, AmericanContingency.com. I want to show you, this is Khalid's site, Command 11, with 11 spelled out completely, command11.com. If you go on over to Amazon, and all of these links are over on our Substack. This is Khalid's book, Agency Rules. It's a fiction book, wink, wink. And while you're over at Amazon, you can check out Mike Glover's book, Prepared, a manual for surviving worst case scenarios. I bought it myself a couple of years ago, as you can see from the screenshot there. And other than that, I want to give everybody a chance to do a 60-second closing, and we're done. So John, I'll go to you first, then Khalid, then Mike Glover. Mike Sterling gets the last word, and we'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah, first and foremost, don't just take in this information and do nothing with it. Act. Start today. It's never too late to start preparing, and this is the best day to start. So get started. Start going to the gym if you haven't gone to the gym in a while. Go pick up a rifle and a pistol and start training. Don't buy 500 rifles. Buy a really good quality firearm, quality pistol, and buy a bunch of ammunition and get training. Find somebody reputable in your area that can give you that training. Former law enforcement, former military. There's a lot of really good training companies out there. Shameless plug for us. We do that in the Midwest. So if you're in the Midwest, look us up and start to plan this out with your family and look at the community, at your community, and also hold to your faith and your beliefs. That's another very important thing because that's what guides us through very difficult, dark times. So those are my main things there. So
Appreciate it.
yeah,
John.
and Chris is kind enough to put up our gun range and training center. So
you could look up Tombstone Gun Range, Southern Illinois, and everything that John and Dave do is on the site there. So Khalid, back to you for 60-second wrap up. Final thoughts.
Well, I think I'm going to echo part of what John said, that, you got to take this seriously. Getting ready means taking the first step. And the first step is always the toughest part. And the first step here is believing this can happen. Because even if you're willing to go and buy the weapons, buy the gear, train yourself up, if you don't think this can actually happen, then when that first bullet goes past you, you're going to freeze. And once you believe that I'm defending my family, period, end of story, then your mind works in a different way. We operate in a world in Pakistan where there are terrorist attacks here every day. And we have gotten so situationally aware around ourselves that we're looking at people in different ways when we see them. Stop looking at your phone so much. Put that down. Get your head up. Look around you. See who looks suspicious. See who looks out of place. Don't be afraid to move your family away from someone who doesn't look like they belong somewhere. When you start to become aware of yourself and start taking things seriously, this threat will disappear because it won't be a threat to you. But as long as you're still going, no, it's fear mongering, it's never going to happen. It's the 10th of September, 2001. That was the 10th of September, 2001. And the world changed the next day. And we don't want that to happen again.
Yeah, appreciate that very much. Khalid, Mike Glover, 60-second closer.
Yeah, number one is have the conversation with the people you love, because if you love them, you want to take care of them. And a lot of times we don't do that. I mean, we don't do it just on a emotional IQ level, let alone having a tough conversation about preparing our entire family or a community, right? So have the conversation. Talk about what your gaps and deficiencies are. It's not a conversation to hype each other up. It's to talk about deficiency. It's to identify weakness. And lastly, you're either an asset or a liability. You're either an asset to your community and your family and yourself, or you're a liability. If you're fat, if you don't know how to shoot, move, communicate, if you don't know how to apply a tourniquet and stop the bleed, well, then you're a liability. Yeah, and if you could accept that because you take your kids hiking and you think, oh, these guys talking about a terrorist attack, and your kid breaks his legs and your fat ass can't carry him out of harm's way, well, then there's both man-made and natural disasters. So be an asset for your community. Don't be a liability. And that's all I got.
Well said, Mike. Mike Sterling, closing thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, these guys have pumped out a whole lot of great stuff. One, don't lose hope. Okay, there's always hope on this kind of stuff. I know it's real easy. This is some real black pill stuff here. It's not happy, it's not pretty, it's not fun, but don't lose hope. Maintain your faith in what you can do, but start with your family. Train smart and train hard, or just like Mike said, you're going to be a liability.
Yeah, sobering thoughts for sure. Well, listen, I appreciate all of you, John, Khalid, Mike, and Mike. We ran way long. Not surprised. You guys shared a ton of insight with our audience. Can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Jeff and Randy and I will be back tomorrow evening, usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Tentative plan is to cover the Obama orchestrated Russia hoax, but that's always subject to change if there's any breaking news tomorrow. Want to thank all of you who are Guardian subscribers. Want to thank all of our vendor sponsors like Carnivalt, freeze-dried meat. It's an amazing product. CCW Safe. We couldn't work 16, 17 hours a day, 7 days a week like Mike Sterling and bring you the truth like this. If it wasn't for that level of support, we'd be punching time clocks instead. But once again, between tonight and tomorrow night, please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless America, and enjoy the closing video.
In the darkness once again, unearthly violence with no end. Our visions quietly storming, funds of fury downstream. Our visions of was put on hold. Now they've been told. In the sound of violence, it's not a dream, their lives are torn. Blood flowing over dirt and stone. In the sight of a deadly drone, greenlit a fire, innocence alone. And a mother and father must bury another son. The world's undone. In the sound of violence, when a shining light we saw, 100 million people strong, people screaming, just listen to me. Politicians into reckoning, people casting choice, their voices will be heard. Unchain our world, the sound of violence, bringing the hope that we all know. Let the fear train let go, clearing the words he will fight for you. Holding hands out, he will pull you through. Heed the words, this warning will ring in hell. Ascending the sound of violence, standing tall, our fists are raised. The Lord guide us saves, and your faith restored its soaring. Stare in the light, eyes are opening, and the light set the words of most prophets tearing down the Pentagon walls. So let us fall. Let's hear the sound of violence.